What fatal flaws instantly ruin any movie? When the two main characters fall in love quickly, especially if they start out hating each other. Most recently, Jungle Cruise. It could have been a good movie without them falling in love. They could have just been friends. Background actors in fight or war scenes waiting for their turn to attack the main character. Jean-Claude Van Damme did a pilot for an Amazon original show that talked about this. He's playing a version of himself in it, but he's also a super spy that uses his acting gig as a reason to be in the places he needs to do spy stuff in. It's weird, I know, but read on. He arrives on a movie set where the director tells him this movie isn't going to be like the old school ones he's used to where all the bad guys wait their turn to get beat up by him. Later on, when he's doing spy stuff, a bunch of real-life guards catch him and they all rush in. Wait, one guard says, stopping the others. If we all attack him at once, we'll bump into each other and stuff, and it'll get really hectic. We should go in one at a time. All of the guards agree, and JCVD smiles knowingly, thinking the fight just got a lot easier. The first guard rolls up and utterly annihilates him, just full-on beats the crap out of him. It was hilarious. I hate when the trailer reveals the entire story. When they break the rules that they set. The rules of your universe can be as bat-crap crazy as you like, but once established, they should be followed. If an established rule is broken, characters should at least notice that stuff isn't right. When the characters have the misunderstanding and break apart trope, then the come back together to resolve conflict. I'm so sick of it, especially when the misunderstanding could easily be avoided in the moment if they just saw the simple solution staring at them in the face. And the breakup sadness is always at the same point in the movie runtime. I'm thinking, good job, writers. You remembered to consult the movie romance cheat sheet. When it's so dark, you actually can't see what's happening. Also, characters that mumble their lines. Drives me nuts. Especially when the directors say it's only dark to illustrate that the story is dark. Cheap as frick. Main characters being invisible while everyone else dies from one punch. I get that the main characters have to survive or they wouldn't be main characters, but at least make the damage somewhat realistic. When they repeat the same sentence 2 to 3 or 10 times in the story for no reason, just to have kind of a motto. I just want to tell you both good luck, and we're all counting on you. Okay, but you did just kind of use the example of a time where it wasn't used as a motto and where it's repeated as kind of a bit for laughs? I'm only including it here because it did make me laugh to remember Airplane. Forced teen angst. I hate movies and TV shows where the world is ending and everyone's fighting for their lives, but the teen characters are still angry at their parents just for existing. Whispered dialogue and ear-shattering action sequences. Living in an apartment and actually care not to aggravate my neighbors. These volume spikes and drops are killing me. You mean when the dialogue is 6 decibels so you turn up the speakers and then the next random explosion at 387 decibels wakes up your neighbor and makes your ears bleed? Yep, I hate that too. When people figure out someone's password in literally no time at all. Like when they look at various things around the desk and that clues them into the password. When they whisper a super important point of the story and you miss it and feel confused for the rest of the movie. That all the major issues could be solved by a simple conversation, but instead, no, I don't have time to explain, leading to forced conflict from misunderstanding. Or when the character seems to intentionally say something in a way to cause the misunderstanding. It reminds me of Game of Thrones when Jon Snow visits the Free Folk to ask them to join the fight against the White Walkers. This one guy asks, "How did Mance Rayder die?" And Jon Snow just says, "I killed him." Everyone in the room goes crazy and they want to kill Jon Snow right there, throwing all of the negotiation out the room until someone intervenes and explains that Jon Snow actually killed Mance out of mercy with an arrow in his heart because Mance was being burned alive by someone else. It would have made much more sense if it said from the very beginning that it was a mercy kill, but no, it's much better to say something without any context just to cause some drama in the show. In superhero movies, when the balance of someone's abilities constantly changes, especially in a fight scene when a character could end the fight in 2 seconds, but that doesn't allow for an epic battle scene, so instead that character just randomly decides to avoid using their most valuable abilities. This completely takes me out of the moment. The Flash series lost me because of this issue. Literally every fight with a non-speedster should be over in 0.2 seconds. Running through wilderness in heels for the majority of the movie. It's irksome. Ah yes, especially when you think of the fact that walking across soft grass in heels can be difficult, but running across mountainous rocky terrain in heels is absolutely no problem apparently. Characters that are brought back alive just to keep the show moving. Supernatural would like a word. Showing and then telling anyway, i.e. treating the audience like idiots. Or when the big reveal happens and they have to give you flashbacks to the other moments in this short movie that foreshadowed the reveal in the first place. When there's a scene that's just advertising a brand. Heh, I love when movie characters open up Bing instead of Google. When you know an actor was chosen for the role for their fame and not for the casting. This is killing the careers of genuine voice actors. I don't want to spend the entire animated movie trying to figure out which characters Dwayne Johnson, Chris Pratt, Rihanna, and Ryan Reynolds are voicing. Just give me genuine, good voice actors who aren't using their everyday frickin' voice. Characters acting out of character or being morons just to make the plot work immediately makes me see them as puppets for storytelling rather than people, and I stop caring about them. Whenever I say, why would they do that in a movie? My husband says, because it's the script, and it brings me back down. When the heroes survive an overblown car crash that would have crippled or killed most people only to walk away without a scratch. It's not very realistic, even for an action movie. I particularly like Jason Bourne falling down an elevator shaft and just walking away because it's alright, he landed on top of the bad guy. Poorly fleshed out character motivation and intelligence, like an astrobiologist illogically taking off their protective gear on an alien planet. A real astrobiologist wouldn't do the one thing you're absolutely not supposed to do, and now they're infected, and it was just a lazy way for the screenwriter to get from point A to point B. Also, poor communication between characters. When setting up or resolving conflict depends on characters illogically choosing to withhold information from each other because there's no time or I'll explain when we get there. It's just lazy writing. The older I get, the more it takes me right out of the story when lazy writing shows through. When they have a whole well-designed spacesuit or futuristic outfit or something that has a helmet to it or face cover that would normally always stay on or be on 80% of the time, but they just decide to never wear it or they're constantly taking it off to remind us of the famous actor who's playing that person. I've also seen movies where a character will have a whole really cool-looking spacesuit or battle attire, only to ditch the whole thing at the beginning and go the rest of the movie looking like the most generic person ever. Over-animated, overacted friend of the main character. I'm looking at you, literally every character in a recent Godzilla movie that isn't a gigantic kaiju. Every single human actor in these movies is this character. I know we need you for exposition, but I resent it. I can't help but notice that characters will often have intense fights and be landing multiple hits on each other, but they'll both remain beautiful after the fight. Have directors not seen how people look after a UFC fight? Bare-knuckle fighting completely messes up your face. When the story includes, "The magic was inside you all along." Ugh. Cringy dialogue takes me right out of the scene. Or rather, I wish it would. In fact, I want to leave the scene. When it's some super cool spy movie and the protagonist meets a new character. I know you. 16 tours in Iraq, special forces, 200 confirmed kills. Notoriety's not ideal in a secret agent. When serious injuries like getting shot, knifed, or hit by a car only affect the protagonists for a second, and then they're right back into the action like nothing happened. But if you sneeze on a henchman, he's dead instantly. The worst for me is when they fall 2 stories and get up like they're just a little bit bruised, like, my man, you probably just broke a bone or two. Or when they say they broke a rib and then keep going like breathing isn't immensely painful. I really want to see an alien invasion film with the humans as the invaders, and our protagonists as the aliens figure out that it just takes one conk on the head and the humans pass out for hours. Oh, Star Wars has their unique brand of this bullcrap. Protagonist gets shot by a blaster while wearing clothes and, he's wounded, get some help! Stormtrooper gets shot by a blaster in their armor, and it's a one-shot kill. When they use CGI to make an almost 80-year-old man look like a 40-year-old, but he still moves like an 80-year-old when trying to kick a poor shopkeeper's butt. I couldn't believe that scene was real when a friend sent me the YouTube link. Scorsese surely must have lost his mind. Heavy makeup and perfect hair. How am I supposed to enjoy a post-apocalyptic movie when the lead actress looks like a beauty pageant contestant? Drives me insane. Especially the ones sick in a hospital bed. Dying with heavy makeup, I guess. Unless she's a scientist, then you get a beauty pageant winner in glasses. This is also true in medieval-style films and TV shows. I can't stand how peasants look immaculately dressed. The spoiler-heavy banners at the local cinema. How about clickbait articles that spoil everything in the title? Yes, I searched on Movie X over the last week. I was going to watch it when it comes out 2 days from now. And 3 days later, my discovery feed is articles like, why character Y could do Z by the end of the movie. Come on guys, give it a little time, and I shouldn't have to do any research incognito. Time period movies where every car looks like it just drove off the lot. What cars never get dirty in movies? Period movies where the books that should be brand new look like they're 100 years old, because they are. Period sets of western towns that should only be a few years old look like they've been out in the desert for 100 years. You can submit your own stories to be featured here on the channel. The story submission link is in the description below. Don't forget to subscribe to Am I the Genius? Can't say much for other people, but shaky cam. The later Jason Bourne movies for me were completely unwatchable because I couldn't tell what the frick was happening. Another personal thing that takes the wind out of some movies for me is when they crowbar in the title of the movie towards the end. I just remembered, as a horror fan, poorly explained monsters that have no rules. I'm specifically talking about Bird Box, where the monsters can seemingly do anything and everything. And where they have about 10 shaky cams they flick between every half second so you can only see flashes of the fight. A bad accent. That generic foreign accent just gets me so angry. House of Gucci. Why didn't we just get some actual Italians to act for the main parts? When they force dialogue to put you in context at the beginning of the movie. Hello, main character name. Didn't you just move from New Jersey? All because your mum passed last year? Yeah, but at least I'm 22 and I have a passion for this hobby. Today, 23rd of March 2002, is the new school election. I wonder who'll be winning. I wish you were president because you're super responsible and introverted. Yeah, me too, but I'm not that popular or pretty. I wish it could change in one day. Yeah, the classic. Good morning, sis. I made you breakfast because Dad went to work early today. Oh, thanks, bro. Dad's really been working hard since Mom died last summer. No normal person talks like this. Completely takes me out of the film or show. Empty cups. I hate this so much. Just gesticulating wildly with a full coffee cup? I think not. At least put some liquid in there for realism, and empty suitcases. Cringy and inappropriate use of Gen Z slang. Look, I know it's annoying, but we do need the kids to Pokemon Go to the movies. It's how we pay for these summer pieces of crap. Sincerely, a guy who loves big dumb summer blockbusters. The simple stuff that would never really happen. It doesn't ruin the entire movie, but the scenes where one spouse will wake the other by hitting them in the face with a pillow. Then the one that got woken up says, "Okay, I'm up." Then laughs and everyone's happy. Bull crap. Nobody does that. You wake up anyone 30 or older that way and you may end up a murder victim. Or the action movies where a cop saves the country from bad guys and doesn't write a single damn report. Shoots 87 bad guys and goes back to work the next day. Good work, Johnson, you're a hero. And at the police department, there's some stupid fruit basket on his desk. Or when people have these amazing breakfasts on the table, take a bite of something and leave, and everyone else in the family is just fine with that. If I have that kind of breakfast on the table, I'm finishing every last frickin' bite. If my kid leaves, right back to the table they are coming. Probably cringy pop culture references that will soon be outdated. In Black Panther, the "what are those?" didn't age well. Firing more ammo than the gun actually holds without reloading. Car keys and sun visors. Hacking a protected computer system in seconds. Black background with green letters and numbers and then a loading bar pops up that loads to 100%. Okay, I'm in, guys. When the villain is just bad for no reason whatsoever. Or when the villain is super smart but the hero defeats him really easily. People driving in films and talking and never once looking at the road. That ruins it and makes it not believable. Somehow, Palpatine returned. Retelling the same story over and over with nothing new to contribute since they're out of ideas. Yep, and they went from using the same fish out of water, destination, buddy cop, or grief resolution concepts to literally just remaking already existing movies, but worse. So, you wonder how I got here. I just love how in Emperor's New Groove, Yzma and Kronk arrive somehow first at the lab, and they're also pretty stumped as to how they got there. Scratching the DVD. That's a fatal flaw right there. Or when someone records adult movies over your Land Before Time cassette. Sound in space. Cars exploding when they fall off a bridge or cliff. 389 bullets in a magazine. Hacking a super secure computer in 30 seconds. enhancing crap quality pictures so they can read a letter or number or plate. Just got 57 more goddamn rounds in this 4-round magazine. When you identify the protagonist's love interest 5 minutes in. Something completely illogical, like a sneeze when a murder is 3 feet away or a random phone call, or when they don't decide to call the police and call their friend 10 times without them picking up. Incorrect science. You only use 10% of your brain, as an example. Trying to explain unexplainable things with quantum mechanics, nanotechnology, and wormholes makes me so mad. When I can't hear the dialogue over the background noise. I watch movies with subtitles. When they speak a different language and it just says, speaks foreign language, especially when it's not just a few lines, but actual dialogue that's important to the movie. As someone who works in the broadcasting industry, that's probably a lazy subtitling team. Sometimes you get a script that was meant for the shoot instead of one meant for dubbing or subbing, and those are usually the ones that have this problem. The proper procedure would either be to hire a translator for those lines, or ask the company they bought the script from to provide the translation. But half the time the translation team is too underpaid to give an F, so it just stays like that. The exotic foreign country yellow filter. Yeah, apparently all of Mexico is just a dusty orange. Poor CGI effects in a brand new movie or excessive reliance on CGI. Matrix 2 and 3 come immediately to mind. They just turn him into a video game character for several of the fight scenes. Knowing the story from a book and the adaptation is just not meeting expectations. Oh, Artemis Fowl. Brilliant criminal mastermind that gives a fairy substances versus little boy. Irrelevant romantic subplot. James Corden. When it starts following a familiar formula. Basically, when crap gets predictable. Having Fantastic Four in the title. Haven't you seen the adult movie adaptation? Children that are emotionally or philosophically or linguistically intelligent far beyond their years. It's very often a tired plot device in rom-com style movies, amongst others. Tiny, overacting Buddhas. Just let kids be kids. They don't need to articulate the mysteries of the universe. It teased me off when the 7-year-old child of a dead parent intuits that deceased mom would want romantically cautious dad to find love and be happy. Spoken like the Harvard-educated therapist from the car seat. Maybe I'm too cynical, maybe it's lazy writing, I'm not sure. An over-the-top bedroom scene. I like to keep my adult movies and entertainment separate. Ah, you mean doing a Steven Seagal? I remember when Cloverfield came out, I was reading some reviews of it and came across a very special individual who disliked the movie because it didn't have a bedroom scene in it. That's right, a found-footage film about a monster the size of a skyscraper destroying New York City was ruined by the lack of anyone getting busy. Ads. This video complaining about ads was not brought to you by Raid Shadow Legends. Check it out, or don't, we literally don't give a crap. Unrealistic surroundings or jargon. As an example, using a made-up cockpit for a plane scene with fake screens and switches to fool the audience, with the pilots using dialogue that they normally would never use. Really blatant violation of some very common aspects of science or physics. Similarly, being in a major city like New York City and then turning a corner and being in a completely different neighborhood. Like there's 50 million people who probably just noticed that. Characters not showing emotion when someone dies. Often they look a bit sad for one shot and then the movie continues like nothing had happened. Totally takes me out of the movie. An undressed old man staring at you from the corner of the room. I mean, Hereditary had one of those and it really added to the last few scenes. Superhero movies where they downplay one character's power to shine a light on another character, or make a character notably absent to avoid character interference. I'm looking at you, Doctor Strange. Captain Marvel. What was the frickin' point of her if she was just going to be busy elsewhere in the galaxy? Unnecessary reboots or continuations of older movies. Characters in an apocalyptic or survival situation, but they look perfectly groomed with makeup and nice clothes. What is the decision process on this kind of crap? People from a certain non-English speaking country speaking to each other in English with accents, rather than having it be authentic and speaking in their native language with the use of subtitles. I particularly liked it in Die Hard when Hans is instructing one of his henchmen to shoot the glass in his native German, and gets annoyed that he doesn't understand and resorts to shouting the instructions in English to make him understand. Gwyneth Paltrow. Gwyneth. That's the Gwyneth time you've been told. We need a tiny bit of blood from you, proceeds to slice palm in half. Stupid movie physics, also anything computer related, especially gaining access. When the dialogue is for stupid people, like in The Witcher's opening scene, a deer gets accidentally mortally wounded, and the scene ends with the sound of what we can assume is the deer being mercifully killed by Geralt. He then goes to the pub and is asked if he'd like some food. He could have replied, "I'm full," but he says, "I'm full of venison," as if our minds can't connect the simplest of dots. When the villain has an important character in their grasp and is able to kill them but decides to throw them around for no real reason. Or the Batman or James Bond trope. "I don't have time to watch you die. I'm going to leave you here in this supervillain trap so you have a chance to escape." A scene with bad CGI. For an example, I highly suggest literally anything from Mars Attacks. Bad writing. Wait, this entire plot can't exist in a world with cell phones, and the movie's set in 2016. Scenes shot in the dark, like the Long Night in Game of Thrones. They should have learned from Lord of the Rings. I watch to see what the frick your characters are doing, but for war and battle scenes, the user is already on suspense, and is already with the pacing. Making the screen darker for him or her will only bring frustration. It's extremely bad directing. James Corden, again. When a main character is overpowering lifelong trained fighters after just starting to fight in the last 30 minutes. What turned your boring Zoom call into a shocking encounter? It was mandatory to keep our mics and cameras on, and my parents were having a screaming match in the background. Maybe not shocking, but it was horrible. At the middle school I used to go to, a teacher got attacked by her boyfriend. Apparently he didn't know her entire class could hear it, and it was recorded as well. A video of it circulated online for a while. The latest update was a month later, and the guy was being charged for attacking her, and the teacher was still not working because of the trauma. A personal social nightmare. During a discussion-heavy class I was taking last year, I had a question that turned into a 2 or 3 minute back and forth with the teacher as they expounded upon my question. Just when they were redirecting the conversation back to their PowerPoint slides, one of the girls in the class wasn't on mute, and someone in their room, I guess their roommate or something, said, "That guy has such an annoying voice." And the girl responded, "I hate hearing him talk. Every time he opens his mouth, I'm just waiting for him to shut up." The teacher reminded everyone to mute themselves, and the girl got wide-eyed and muted. We could see her tell her roommate about it and then laughing, but they didn't apologize or anything. There were just a few moments of silence, and then the teacher moved on. I stepped away from my computer for a bit and barely said anything for the rest of the semester. My friend is a special ed teacher. A student recorded a brief clip of an inopportune moment and almost got him fired for inappropriate behavior. He was playing a harmonica and briefly had his back turned to the computer. The student turned down the volume on his computer and said my friend was simulating a certain bedroom act. There was an investigation and he was cleared, but it was pretty traumatic for him. I attended a virtual networking Zoom for work, and during the main speaker event, someone unmuted. They were clearly on the phone with someone and started going, "Oh no, I can talk now. It's cool. I'm just on this stupid webinar. I'm not even going to listen to this." That happened at my company too. My leadership wanted to do spirit meetings to boost morale, and one of the agents had a hot mic that picked her up saying, "Hang on, I've got to go to this whack bullcrap meeting." It was amazing. She was just saying what we were all thinking. Spirit meetings over Zoom. Look, I try to be an open-minded guy and let people do what they want on their own time, but my lord, having this sort of thing be mandatory would make my soul die. Maybe do one as a broadening your horizons thing, but please, let that be that. Last year, a student of mine logged on and told me her mum's boyfriend hit her mummy, and her mummy was sleeping in the bathroom and wouldn't get up. She said she was scared and had her toddler sister with her under her bed. I stayed really calm, told her I was going to help. The other kids started joining, and I told her to stay on the line no matter what I said to everyone else. I grabbed my phone and started texting my boss and every other person in our school. Another teacher who I'm close with ran into my classroom. She was a champ and started reading to the kids. We called the police and sent them to our address on file. They weren't at the address listed in our contact information. Another parent got on and was telling me to mute the girl. She wasn't supposed to have a sibling on Zoom. The toddler was crying. More people in my classroom were trying to help, and I tell everyone but this kid to log off. She's in kindergarten and can't really read yet. She started begging me to not end the Zoom call while trying to calm her sister. and this other mother is being an absolute bunt. She's telling me how long I'm legally supposed to be on Zoom and all this BS. The principal stepped onto the screen and told her really nasty to "Read the room, ma'am, get off." Everyone but the first kid and one other student log off. He's this really kind boy. I tell him I need him to go. The other student is asking over and over, "Not me, right? I want to stay on, I'm scared." And he starts comforting her. We're frantic. We start asking where she is, can she get a phone, what does the house look like, all that stuff. Officer shows up at our school, we call DHR, we hear a man yelling at my student to quiet the baby. I felt complete horror and dismay and helpless. The officer who came to our school, it was a small town, knew the family and might have an idea where they are. He sprints out after talking to her and asking her mother's name. We keep trying to comfort her, but she's upset. Like an idiot, I'd set my Zoom for 45 minutes and the time is coming to an end. I tell her I'm going to send another link, but it cuts off. Every teacher and administrator is now in my class. We all feel helpless. Same questions from everyone over and over. Then, just a couple of minutes later, we get word the cops have found her. I fell on my knees and started to cry. The boyfriend had in fact attacked the mother. He was arrested. The mother was, and as far as I know is, in the throes of addiction. The little girl and little sister live with their grandparents in another state now. I was giving a university lecture on Zoom. I only require camera if it's an evaluation. One of my students was speaking, camera on, and her dad goes by wearing only a thong. He realizes the camera is on and makes a quick escape. I had so many internal questions. Multiple shots being fired at the apartment across from me. I was on my weekly team call when it happened, and I was asking a question, so I was unmuted. I went, "Holy crap, that's small arms fire," and I hit the floor. All my team saw was me throwing my headset off and frantically rolling off the couch. Supposedly, my mic picked up me calling 911. Don't get involved with substances, everyone. There's a chance that people will come and try to shoot you in the middle of the day. This one girl who talked crap about our professor without turning off her mic. Someone recorded it and went viral on TikTok. Several million views. Funny thing is, it was the best class I've ever taken. Damn, I thought me meowing at my cat when I didn't know I was unmuted was bad, until I read all of these other comments. My cat once walked over the keyboard and I said, "Sure, why wouldn't you walk over there? It's not a laptop, it's a modeling ramp your father built for you." Turns out she'd unmuted my mic. The instructor politely asked everyone to mute their mics. Last year, during the Dixie Fire in California, CAL FIRE set up a Zoom meeting to give a state of affairs for residents who were evacuated. It was a public meeting. Whomever hosted didn't understand how to mute people. Some guys came on and started saying utterly offensive and disgusting things. For 10 minutes, every bad word, insult, vulgarity you could imagine. The CAL FIRE team didn't seem to understand how to mute people or how to read the comments telling them what was happening. My husband was a fireman deployed to that fire and I was angry. I just wanted information. I was on Discord with friends and then hopped into a Zoom call for work, early. I forgot I switched calls and walked away from my desk with my headset on to go get a snack before the meeting. Someone said, "Hey John." Thinking it's one of my gaming friends, I blurt out, "The frick? Since when do you call me John?" It was not a gaming friend, it was the CEO. I work for a startup, so luckily I have a decent relationship with him. I realized my mistake a second later and mentioned that I'd been sitting in a call with friends while working today, and I apologized. He luckily laughed it off with me and never brought it up again. This blind kid in a Zoom class at the end of the last year during English, I saw out of the corner of my eye he was the only one with a camera on. The teacher was chill if we didn't want them on while online. He starts stroking his soldier in front of half the class and the teacher. The teacher then kicked him from the class without saying anything and continued on with the lecture like nothing had happened. The poor guy probably didn't even know, but yeah, that was a very jarring English class. My husband attended a club meeting that was not password protected. Someone joined the meeting and played not just an adult film, but an illegal kind of adult film. Everyone was terrified and left the call as soon as it happened. Later, the FBI contacted the people in the call to get statements. I saw a guy's wife whack him on the head with a purse. He was on mute and no one else on the call had noticed. I had to interrupt the call to ask if he was okay. Apparently, the wife had been beating him around for a while and this was the final straw that made him leave her. My sister's middle school, also the middle school I went to, had a class that got Zoom bombed. There were multiple parties who joined. One was a couple screwing and the others were yelling racial slurs and other vulgarities. Luckily, it wasn't my sister's class. I should also mention that according to our local police department, the people were out of state. They probably didn't know anything about the school to begin with. At the end of 2019, I was at the office in London and on a Zoom meeting with about a dozen other folks spread across the US. Got some pretty shocking news during the call and felt a cold sweat come on, a lightheaded sensation, and then a searing, burning pain in my chest. I'd suffered a massive heart attack and apparently managed to say, "I need to go," and then pushed my chair back from my desk and collapsed. Thankfully, it was still working hours and the office had people in it, so my teammates got me into a safe place, grabbed my nitro spray, called an ambulance, and all was eventually well. I ended up having a quadruple bypass not long after this. Had it been an hour or two later in the day, I'd probably died as the office would have been empty. I mean, this is an incredible story and thank goodness you were in your office at the time, which makes it ironic that the platform you were calling on in 2019 would have seen you out of your office and in no such position to have witnesses help you not but a year later. Color me surprised that there are stories of people using Zoom pre-pandemic. Last year, some girl in my class was clearly not in a good place while on screen. She was reported and went to rehab, and I saw her when school opened up. She seemed pretty good when I saw her, but everyone in class was pretty traumatized. At a company I worked for, in a Zoom meeting with a data center the CEO was talking to because they were thinking of purchasing it, a bank of industrial UPSs caught fire and the fire suppression system began going off. For a reference, they had a system that worked in this order. First, the chemical extinguisher, then a chemical that removes all oxygen from the room, and then water. Step 1 failed, and the guy who had been in the room was out of the door only 2 seconds before Step 2, the chemical that removes all oxygen from the room, went off. He barely made it. Probably shouldn't have stopped to try to put out the fire. They did not buy the DC, but they did hire the tech guy. My friend's boyfriend witnessed a coworker have a heart attack and die while on a Zoom call, as the other attendees sat there helplessly in horror. You can submit your own stories to be featured here on the channel. The story submission link is in the description below, and if you want to listen to some vibey music in the background, check out easymode, also linked below, and subscribe. Not terrifying, but real secondhand embarrassment. We were on a Zoom conference call with our marketing agency. We were their biggest client by a mile, but our relationship had become strained as they weren't delivering results. The purpose of the meeting was for them to A. introduce our new account director, and B. present the results and action plan back to us. Our marketing manager, ironically called Karen, was giving them a real hard time. The new account director shared her screen, but inadvertently shared her Slack on the screen where her and her whole team were talking crap about us in real time as they were presenting. This included calling Karen a real Karen, and "I bet she'll ask to speak to the manager," and saying that they'll have to stop lying to us soon. Karen let them keep it on the screen the whole time and told them at the end. The account director cried. I had an optional Zoom meeting with my boss and the head of a software company whose product we use. I was the only one who showed up, and I wanted to die, let me tell ya. My brother was on a Zoom interview for a job in England early in the morning in my basement where we had our computers set up and I used to have my bedroom. I crawled across behind him to avoid being seen in my undies as I needed to get some clothes from my old wardrobe. My brother later told me he could see me crawling across. I jokingly said his interviewer told him, "Your bedroom slave is escaping." And funnily enough, he got the job. I remember during lockdown when they were doing court sessions over Zoom. A prosecutor realized that someone accused of domestic attacks was calling in from the same room as his victim despite a no-contact order. My customer's cat jumped on her desk and the AI face-blurring filter blurred everything but the cat's butthole. I had to watch a guy comb his eyebrows. Not super shocking, but I, a 22-year-old female, joined a conference call with like 4 middle-aged men I've never met, so I was a bit nervous about being inexperienced, and then one of them shared his screen with the 2 obvious adult website tabs in his browser. I have no idea if the others noticed, but feeling the guy's subtle, "oh frick," realization through the screen made me feel not as intimidated, to be honest. Our coworker began slandering our vendor when she thought she was on mute. Work from home had just begun, and we heard a partner at my firm taking a leak. Everyone heard the sound of the waterfall in the toilet, then the flush, and then the hand washing in the sink, and the door closing. The audience for the call was other junior and senior partners at the firm. I was an admin, so I ran the agenda of these meetings. I didn't regret that role. Not Zoom, but back in the old TeamSpeak days, we were all in a call, and a couple of our guild were from South Africa. All of a sudden, there was all this shouting and noise coming from one of their microphones, muffled, but you could clearly hear stuff like, "Who the frick are you?" and "Get out! Get out!" followed by 2 shots and silence. He was just left there in TeamSpeak, and we were all shouting, and the other guy from South Africa just doesn't know the other guy's full real name or where he lives, so we're all powerless. Just this ghost sat in TeamSpeak. By the following morning, he'd disconnected, and we heard nothing for about a week. He eventually just appeared online one day and told us how he'd been broken into, they'd killed his 2 guard dogs, and the shots were just into the ceiling to make him compliant. The worst part was he told us it wasn't the first time it had happened, and gave the other South Africa guy his details in case it happened again whilst we were in chat, so that we could call the police there. This story happened to me on my second day of training in my first ever job. I'd just graduated in June of 2021 and found a job in October of that same year. I used Zoom for all of my university classes, but for work they used Microsoft Teams, so I'm not familiar with that at all. On my second day of training, we have an important meeting with the vice president of the company. The vice president keeps babbling on about things I don't understand because this is only my second day, so I'm just messing around and I right-click him. I see 3 options, I think. Mute, spotlight, and pin. So I'm like, mute? That sounds impossible. How can a person who's on their second day of training be able to mute someone, let alone the vice president? So I think about it for a bit and go, oh, it would definitely mute it on my side only. So I clicked mute. And it worked. I muted the guy from my side. I tried to right-click and look for unmute, but it didn't work. Until a couple of seconds later, I heard people typing in the chat and also speaking up, "Hey, Vice President, we can't hear you." So he unmutes himself and says, "Somebody just muted me. That's hilarious." At this point, my heart was beating real quick and this meeting had more than 150 people in it. I typed in the chat, "Sorry, didn't mean to do that," and then tried to unmute myself to apologize, but it took some seconds to register, and then I told my coworkers, "Yeah, I definitely didn't mean to mute him," and I see to my horror that the unmute button worked, and everyone heard me say that. Vice President then jokingly told me, "You should have muted yourself, not me." Overall, he took it pretty well and is a super laid-back person, but oh boy, that was terrifying. I thought I was fired for sure. I understand the curiosity, but you really let your intrusive thoughts win out there. Anyone else probably would have tested it in a lower stakes situation. Good on your CEO for being such a great sport about it. Zoom interview for a very well-paying admin position at my local hospital. Lots of money on the line. I was doing the interview while my daughter was at school, and the husband walks into the room saying, "Well, would you look at the time? Time to suck my wife's nose." He said this while undressed and visible to the camera. The interviewer laughed, I was mortified, and a conversation discussing onboarding became an employer ghosting me. RIP. On a town hall, one of our leaders was preaching about how we would get good raises last year. All of a sudden we hear, "Oh, what a crock of bullcrap." She thought she was on mute. I have 2 of varying levels of shock and not safe for workness. The first was right after the lockdown and everyone was forced into using Zoom meetings. A guy used one of those background images. Well, he was wearing a black turtleneck and the whole time he looked like a disembodied head floating in outer space. And the second, I personally have an oversized monitor, so I could see even the small tiny little faces very well on Zoom. A guy was in a shirt and tie and all seemed normal, but he kept making some very unusual facial expressions. And actually at one point clamped his hand over his own mouth. Then suddenly and very briefly the back of a woman's head popped up. Most people tried to pretend they didn't see anything, but there was one guy who kept asking whose head that was and why they were listening to our meeting, and just on and on. People became more annoyed by the guy asking questions than about what they'd seen. Attended a Zoom meeting, and one old couple didn't know you had to self-mute. Just prior to the wedding beginning, the wife, who was off-screen, yelled, "Toilet paper, I need toilet paper, quick." Then just after the wedding ceremony finished, the same lady said, "That was the most boring wedding talk I've ever heard." This happened when I joined my company as a fresher and I was in my training period. So one of the trainers had started sharing his screen and it had adult websites open. He stopped sharing instantly, but everyone saw it. Then the other trainer, who was a lady by the way, told him to leave the meeting saying she'd take care of the rest. My professor was teaching and says, "Hey guys, this might sound weird," and then passed out, completely fell back. It was really scary, but a few seconds later her husband came in and was like, "Frick, frick, frick, frick," and sees the Zoom and says, "Class is cancelled." Ends the meeting. She emailed later explaining that she passes out easily and it's never happened while teaching before. Great professor and a very kind-hearted person. After 2 years of at-home work, it finally happened. We don't require video, so it's only an audio thing. My cat stepped on the keyboard and unmuted me, and I didn't catch it. My fat cat gives a big yawn, so I say, "Oh, big yawn for a big girl," in my cutesy dumb talking to the cat voice, and the meeting goes completely silent. The coworker goes, "Oh, she's a big girl, huh?" And I turned so red. Today, actually, this woman training us for work. Her daughter has the stomach flu. She comes running in and said she didn't feel well, and the trainer said, "Hold on just a second," and the girl threw up all over her on Zoom in front of us. We were giving our pitches for our senior project. One of my teammates gave his pitch and got absolutely crapped on by this old cranky Russian professor. We were all in a Discord together while on the Zoom, so we could chat during the other people's presentation. Not knowing he was unmuted in the Zoom, one of the teammates said, "Don't worry, he's just a butthole." The professor then proceeded to simply say, "Everyone, please make sure your mics are muted." I didn't realize my camera was on during one of my classes. I took a dump, had to get up butt naked, to find toilet paper, wiped and vaped all on camera. Not sure if anyone noticed. Nobody said anything, but I wanted to die when I realized. Teacher demanded that we stay in view with the camera on. I really had to use the bathroom. The teacher said no, I can't leave the camera view, so I said, "Fine then." And I took the computer to the bathroom and was pooping on camera. Only the upper half of me was visible here, so nothing inappropriate was shown. I did leave the mic on, as per class policy though. The class was all guys, and I was basically famous for a day. The teacher never spoke about it again, but now allowed us to leave for bathroom breaks. Another one was where I needed to shave my beard, and the same situation, but a different teacher, so I shaved my beard on screen. High school was a crazy time. Sitting down for a pre-trial hearing, and my lawyer can't figure out how to turn off the cat filter on his webcam. I lifted my arms up to stretch. The bottom of the top I was wearing got caught on my bracelet, and it pulled the top right up, and my right mammary gland popped out. I was in online class and playing Brawl Stars. I was in science class and my teacher was presenting something. I clicked the button to zoom into the presentation. When she was done, I was zoned out and clicked the unmute button instead of the zoom out button by accident. I said something about someone teleporting away and she was like, "Please get off whatever game you're playing and don't get back on until after school." She was really nice about it, but to this day I've never used my phone in class. One of the executives at my company told me how a coworker logged into a meeting early, then left to get water. Her spouse walked into the room undressed, not knowing the camera was on, then proceeded to bend over to pick up something off the floor, giving everyone in the meeting a horrifying show. Who was the stupidest cry-bully you've ever seen, and why were they so cringe? I was in a crowded parking lot, driving around looking for a space. There was one car ahead of me. They stopped, so I stopped as well. I'm not sure why she stopped, because there were no empty spaces and nobody was pulling out, but whatever. Then, before I even had time to react, her reverse lights came on and she came flying backwards towards me. I didn't even have time to honk. She slammed into the front of my car, got out of hers, and started screaming that I hit her. When officers arrived, she was crying and shaking and complained that her neck hurt, and cursing me for slamming into the back of her car. Thankfully, two people who had been walking through the parking lot when this occurred told the officer what really happened. Later, the driver of the car that hit me tried to tell her insurance company that I knew the witnesses and that's why they lied. I didn't know the witnesses, by the way. At any rate, if the witnesses hadn't stuck around to give statements, I'd have been screwed. My mum ruined my courthouse wedding. She called me selfish and made fun of my shoes on my wedding day and made me swear to her that I wouldn't tell our family I was getting married until we had a big ceremony. Then proceeded to go behind my back and tell people anyway. She's now genuinely surprised that I'm upset, and going around crying to all of my aunts and uncles about how her only daughter won't speak to her. A woman rear-ended my car in the car wash of all places. She failed to put her car in neutral and rolled right into me. She then proceeded to yell at me and insist that it was my fault for not going fast enough. After we finally convinced her that the track always goes the same speed, she decided to blame the car wash employee for making the track too slow. I was a witness to an accident wherein a lady blew through a stop sign without looking or slowing. Her sister, who was in the car, died from injuries sustained in that accident. She then tried to blame the other driver who had full right-of-way for going too fast, and tried to claim that she had in fact stopped at the sign. She basically tried to set up the other driver to take the fall for recklessly killing her sister. I came into the arbitration and sunk that real fast. An older lady walked into a construction site where she knew she wasn't supposed to go, just to snoop around when the workers weren't there. and then sued because she slipped on a plastic floor covering. She worked there. She knew the area was off limits and did it anyway. My friend's sister. She doesn't feed her kids nor send the oldest one, who's 7, to school. Her neighbors reported her to CPS, and now she's posting statuses about how cruel people are for separating a mother and her children. You know, I really thought this was going to be a fun video about conversational slam dunks of people who got way too argumentative. But instead, we're getting desperate people with lawsuits and awful parents. Why can't you people be more fun? My brother-in-law, my wife's brother. Everything is terrible in his life because everyone conspires to be mean to him. All of his substance problems are other people's fault. The government never should have taken his kid from him because he's a good father. When his disabled mother got custody of his kid and then let him move in with them, she made up all these stories about him hitting her and the kid. When the government, both APS and CPS, told us we had to protect them from him, we had no right to take his kid, that he hadn't had custody of for years. He lives off disability for back problems he's had since getting a beatdown for running his mouth at the wrong people, despite the fact that his doctors tell him he doesn't need a wheelchair and can work. It's our fault he can't pay his bills, even though he's still living in his mother's house rent-free, and that surely has nothing to do with the fact that he blows his disability check on substances and junk food as soon as he gets it. In his mind, we abandoned him to die and are horrible people for not letting him live with us, despite the fact the government literally put his mother and kid in our care to keep them safe from him. He came up with a scheme where he called 911 to be taken to the local hospital. When he got there, he told them he was dying because he was wheelchair-bound and abandoned in a squalid house. The house became squalid after the mother and kid were removed because he refused to clean and had a dog he never let outside. He actually got Adult Protective Services to call us and tell us we had to take care of him and fix up his house. By the way, we live 250 miles away in a different state. We explained the history and gave them the names of the caseworkers for his mother and son, who know him well. APS confirmed what we told them. When APS told him we didn't agree to let him live with us, he demanded they file a court order to force us to allow him to live in our home. APS told him that wasn't actually a thing that could happen, so he started screaming profanities at everyone in the hospital. She called us from the hospital, we heard him screaming in the background. When the doctors told him again he didn't need a wheelchair, he screamed at them too. They discharged him, but he refused to leave on his own, so they sent him home in an ambulance. He refused to get out, so they wound up driving him back to the hospital and leaving him on a gurney in the ER waiting room. After 8 hours, when he still refused to leave, they had security drag him out and dump him in the parking lot. A few weeks later, he was calling us, begging us to pay his bills, and goes off again on how he had no right to take his kid from him, and we're terrible people because we'd refused to acknowledge what a good father he is. He lives in the rural South. Do you know what it takes for the CPS to take your kid in a poor county in the South? We're talking immediate danger to life. Not only did they do that, and then a judge permanently took away his custody, but then they came back and said the kid and his mother weren't safe in the same house as him, so that's when we, quote, stole his kid. I raised my kids, they've graduated and are adults. I have zero desire to raise another kid, let alone one who has significant emotional issues from his dad's treatment. But guess what? I am, because I'm not a total piece of crap and I can't turn my back on them. But in my brother-in-law's eyes, this is all a vast conspiracy to spite him. Sometimes my children ask me why they've met my mother but never met my father. I tell them he died a long time ago when I was a kid. In reality, my dad was just an awful father and spouse, and my mum had to kick him out because he was a danger to everyone there. We used to spend weekends at his new house, but around the time I turned 10, he told my mother to stop dropping us off, and he gave her a shoebox full of all the pictures he had of us. We tried calling him on the holidays every now and again, but he finally just told us to stop contacting him altogether. Last year, my mother passed away, and he decided to reach out to me and expressed he'd changed and wanted to make things up to me. I told him it was okay, I filled him in with how I was doing in life and sent him pictures of my children. But I expressed I was already a man and didn't need a father anymore, but he was forgiven for the 20-year absence. He then proceeded to tell me that I'm horrible for pushing him away and abandoning him, that he was dying and just wanted to fix things. So I explained to him it was already forgiven, but he'd abandoned me and I had no time for his foolishness. I wish things would have been different, but he's too much of a bad influence to allow in my children's lives. Facebook drama from a few years ago. This girl was leaving a bar drunk and she backed her car into the car of someone she was an acquaintance with while exiting the parking lot. Then the next day, she went off on him for telling the police he saw her do it, when he knew that she was poor and could have just said he didn't see it and had his insurance pay. She kept digging a deeper hole and all of the replies were like, "Which don't drive drunk." It was glorious. My ex-husband got arrested for having adult films featuring unwilling subjects on his laptop. He blamed me, saying it was my fault he was so depressed and went looking for it. This guy got upset, saying we always talk about him behind his back. He'd creep up to the door in our apartment and stand there listening to our conversations. And of course, we'd talk about him. He owed two of us over $600 and refused to pay it. And then we were the bad people because we'd talk about it in our own apartment, not knowing that he was creeping around the door. I lost a lot of weight, like 150 pounds. My overweight friend didn't. I don't care, she's my friend. I love her. I tried on a pair of size 12 or size 8 US jeans, but they were too big, so I asked for the smaller size. Before I could try them on, my friend stormed out of the shop, and when I followed her, she screamed at me for rubbing my weight loss in her face. I lost the weight in 2015. I'd been that size for 4 years before the incident. I mean, look, these things are really difficult for some people, and the lifestyle changes needed to drop all that weight might just be outside someone's capability depending on what else is going on in their life. But honestly, I don't know what you were meant to do to spare her feelings here. Are you meant to just not shop on shopping trips? Or take things that are too big? An employee was being fired for a multitude of infractions at a coffee shop. He had been caught by management calling customers things like crap for brains and stupid F under his breath, and several customers had also reported that behavior. He was constantly late, or he'd leave early or beg others to cover his shift. Instead of restocking or cleaning the area during downtimes, he'd take out his drumsticks and practice, which annoyed the other employees and customers. During inventory counts, we noticed whole pallets of sandwiches or baked goods were missing, as well as bottled drinks. We were mysteriously out of huge 5-pound bags of the espresso roast. The numbers just weren't adding up. He was subsequently fired after being caught bad-mouthing a customer while a visiting manager was also in the cafe. The guy didn't know it. The guy blamed all of the issues on everyone else. Late to work turned into I missed the bus or my roommate forgot to wake me up in time. Leaving early turned into, well, I got a call for a gig or there was a concert I wanted to see. Food missing turned into, I didn't have money to eat and it's the company's responsibility to ensure I'm fed on the clock. And calling customers names turned into, they misunderstood me. Management said, what part of calling a customer a dumb F is a misunderstanding, followed by, it's not my fault they're so sensitive. All of this guy's problems were blamed on everyone else, and all of his issues and situation in life was blamed on everyone else too. Us employees stopped inviting him out because at bars he'd order drinks and tell the bartender one of us was covering, and then skip out or leave rapidly before the check was presented. He'd also walk around tables when people got up to dance or talk in a group and guzzle down their drinks. He was an all-over crappy raccoon person. Found out after he was fired from our store, he was hired by a Starbucks in the mall, who failed to call for a reference or check even though our store was listed as a previous place of employment. He was caught stealing money and food from there as well. I want to add that this was our worst employee. We had another guy who worked his butt off but had a generally bad demeanor, but he was a solid hard worker. One day he sat down and watched the drummer dude spout his mouth off and treat customers like crap and turned to me and said, I hope to God I don't sound or act like that. Just from watching this one guy, the other employee became a model customer service employee almost overnight. Also, we had another guy there. He went by some weird animal name instead of his real name. He was sent home for showing up drunk several times and was let go after management found he had snuck in a bottle of vodka and was adding it to girls' drinks during the late shift. Ugh. You can submit your own stories to be featured here on the channel. The story submission link is in the description below. And if you want to listen to some vibey music in the background, check out easymode, also linked below, and subscribe. I once witnessed a car accident where a lady blew a red light and another car, whose light had clearly turned green, didn't see her and hit her broadside. The innocent driver had her view obscured by my vehicle also entering the intersection. I was able to stop, but she couldn't. After the impact, witnesses stopped to help, and the lady who ran the red light tried to argue that she was going through on a yellow and that her neck hurt. Apparently, she had the nerve to attempt a lawsuit over it, because I was later interviewed or deposed over the phone by Crazy Lady's lawyer, who tried to trip me up by saying another witness claimed to be in the same place I was. Too bad, man. I was right there, and there's no way in heck you can paint me as an unreliable witness for your client to steal money from an innocent for her own stupid mistake. A local business owner and friend asked a lot of his regular customers to invest in his new business in Atlanta by buying shares. I bought in, knowing we wouldn't break even for at least 3 years, but that he could sell religion to the Pope. He had losses for 2 years, broke even at year 3 as predicted, then 4 years in he closes the Atlanta store and opens in another town, but this time he's doing it all with his, quote, own money. Bullcrap, he's doing it with the inventory and proceeds from the Atlanta store. Even has a shiny new house, car, the works for his new venture. He's shocked to the core and hurt, I tell you, hurt and disappointed when all the shareholders took him to court. Unfortunately, our lawsuit basically never got off the taxiway, as it soon looked like the cost of going through the courts would quickly outpace our losses. People started dropping off and it fell apart. Those bridges he well and truly burned. The final store has changed names, but appears to be going strong. No way in hell will I name the business, the owner would have no qualms about bringing a defamation suit against me in a heartbeat. Sometimes karma is just asleep at the wheel and you have to accept it. My best friend's ex-girlfriend. Basically, her ex was kicked out of her parents' house when she told them she was a lesbian. She moved in with my best friend since they were dating at the time. At first, she told my bestie that she was too depressed to find a job. My best friend was okay with that, even if it meant she'd have to work more, which she did. She even found a second part-time job. For the next 6 months, whenever my best friend asked her if she'd found a job, she'd always get the "I'm too depressed" response. Eventually, my best friend found out her girlfriend cheated on her. Her excuse for cheating was, "You're always at work and never have time for me. I need someone who'll be there for me." My best friend kicked her out and then her ex blames her for having to move back in with her parents. The kicker? Turns out her parents never really kicked her out, she was just tired of them telling her to get a job. My crazy college girlfriend cheated on me and then blamed me for causing problems in our relationship by, quote, being obsessed with the truth, as I'd figured out what had happened. As far as counter-accusations to throw in an ongoing relationship debate go, this is about as poor as it gets, folks. The person isn't even trying to disguise the fact that they're lying, and is just disguising their partner's valid concerns as craziness. My brother, our whole life, has blamed our middle-class upbringing for him taking zero responsibility. He's basically a 40-year-old version of, nobody gets me. He spends his money recklessly, has turned down opportunities to advance himself in lieu of making YouTube videos in his shed, ranting about how richies keep him down. It's pathetic. This is how my brother is too. 38 years old and owes over $100,000 in taxes and child support. Doesn't have a real job even though he used to make decent money, but spent his checks as soon as he received them. My dad had to buy him a cheap, crappy car just to get him back on his feet, and he had the nerve to get angry about how crappy of a car it was. When I was teaching, I had a student I adored who had some behavioral issues. I did everything I could to support him. One day we were taking a test and he was talking, and I'd have to have him go out in the hallway if he continued. He continued talking, so I told him to go out in the hall. He called me autistic on his way out, it's his favorite insult, so I wrote him a referral. I called his parents and they didn't answer, so I sent an email explaining what happened, that he got a referral, and that I hope we can work together to help him manage his reactions. His mother responded saying that my behavior was unacceptable and that she's done speaking to me and I'll hear from her lawyer. She went all the way up to the district level to complain about me, telling all sorts of lies and making me look like a horrible person. She's a cop, so I'm sure she had her connections. I don't teach anymore. My mother. She pulled the old going to the store routine when I was a kid. She called 3 days later from halfway across the country, complaining because Dad had shut off the credit cards. To this day, she tries to make my dad the bad guy for her failed attempt at abandoning her family. They divorced shortly after and I stayed with Dad. I've always been second-rate to her for being, in her words, disloyal. My fiancé's manager tried to strong-arm her into staying at her current job instead of taking one that won't destroy her mental health, and then cried about how no one at work likes her. My friend's baby daddy makes no effort to see his kid on his court-approved visits, but when she won't let him see the baby any random time he asks, which is her following court orders by the way, she's apparently a witch and keeping him from his beloved child. A former friend and housemate who I stupidly let live at my place rent-free and who I gave some pretty significant help towards lawyer fees with. She lost her mind when I started voicing my concerns over her new boyfriend. She was still technically married to another man, and the new boyfriend was into all sorts of culty, new age, spirit science craziness. Oh, and they'd do things like make these lavish meals in the kitchen and not clean up, or block my car into my driveway. Then she went on a rant in which she compared me to her violent, soon-to-be ex-husband, because I hadn't put away a container of cinnamon immediately after using it. When I served an eviction notice to the B-bomb, she gave Academy Award-level performances for melodrama of her own making. My 50-something-year-old's mum's very frequent non-sober calls in hysterics about how her life is ruined. This was after she turned our lives upside down with her alcoholism and substance use throughout our childhood, went to rehab 5 times and relapsed every time, and was given literal countless chances by my dad and family to start fresh, including amazing job and housing opportunities. She nearly bankrupted my dad, forcing him to move and raise 6 children on his own, and eventually lost relationships with all of her family and children except me, up until 2.5 years ago when I received a call that she had screwed up again, got herself kicked out of her free housing arrangement, and lost her job before it started, forcing me to go pick her up on the side of the road and crash at my apartment for the night. I remember when I was scrambling to hide all of the alcohol and pills in my place before getting her, then picking her up and her crying that my dad was still ignoring her and wouldn't give her money anymore. It really hit me that I'd finally had enough. Victimizers, am I right, guys? My ex cheated on me and I left him. He said he cheated because he felt like he couldn't please me in bed and it made him insecure. Pfft, please. My cat plays with the closet door and sometimes he shuts himself in. Then I get an angry cat yowling to get let out and he acts like I'm the one that locked him in there. Thank you for the slightly lighter tone of this one, and yes, cats are the biggest cry-bullies in the world. Screaming at you until you open the door and then having the nerve to look offended that we've interrupted their majesty's privacy. I manage an outpatient substance and alcohol education and treatment center. We're licensed with the state so that anyone who gets a DWI or DUI has to go through an evaluation process and complete some form of the education and treatment program dependent on that evaluation in order to get their license reinstated or satisfy a probation requirement. Every state has its own version of this for alcohol or substance-related driving offenses. Everyone has to do it, and no one is exempt or special regardless of whether they've won or lost their criminal case in court. There are those who very obviously made the mistake of driving after a couple of glasses of wine, had a BAC just over the legal limit. They realize they messed up and they usually end up in the lowest level. They get it done, no complaints. But every single day I come across at least one person who blames the state for having to do the program. They call it a racket, a money scheme, a waste of their time, and complain about having to go through it. They treat me like crap in the process as if I make the rules. Without fail, these are always the people who've had multiple infractions, have substance or booze addictions, and many of them have concurrent charges of vehicular manslaughter or accidents with injuries. These mother effers who walk through my doors, who've literally killed or injured someone because of intoxicated driving, avoided jail, and have to go through 6 weeks of outpatient treatment, complaining about having to do it, tee me off to no end. I used to keep my mouth shut, but I've experienced so many of these perpetual victim types that when they start their complaining, I remind them of the real reason they're in my office. The cheaters that you see on Reddit. I'm so torn between these two men. Woe is me. It happens repeatedly. One guy victimized himself for catfishing, claimed it was totally harmless. I believe he was just trying to prove to himself that he isn't a terrible person. How do you go from book smart to street smart? Here's one tip: if someone randomly tries to befriend you in an aggressive way, they do not have your best interest at heart. An example would be if you're walking down the street and someone goes, "Hey, what's up? Where are you from, buddy?" Also applies to the standard pickup artist tactic of some bro being aggressively friendly and then jostling your confused butt away from whatever girl you were chatting with. My favorite strategy for dealing with people who do this is match and overcome their enthusiasm with your own. They yell salutations at you, you roar eternal love at and bear hug them. Just make sure to watch your pockets so they don't steal anything. If you're traveling, never randomly stop on the sidewalk to consult a map or appear visibly lost. Duck into a coffee shop or something to orient yourself. I agree with this one. If you're in a big city and appear as a tourist, you're a prime target. Listen to your gut. If someone feels off, don't ignore that feeling. Be frickin' aware of where you are and how you're presenting yourself. Develop a 1,000-yard stare and wear it in rough neighborhoods. If you don't look approachable, you won't be approached. Fights aren't like the movies. Duh. Someone will go to jail, someone will get hurt, and it can end very, very badly regardless of how experienced at fighting or angry the participants are. I'm a bartender at a large dance club, so I see a good deal of fights on the weekends from tough guys and girls with tons of street cred and street smarts. Let me just clear this up now. Fighting, even if it's ruled as a mutual participant crime, is still assault, and you'll go to jail most likely, even if you're released shortly after or never fully charged with the crime. Read, you lost or weren't the instigator. People get hurt all the time, really badly. Concussions are ridiculously easy to get when people are taking blows to the head and falling over, which always happens in a fight. And guess what? If you punch some guy, even just a little bit, and he falls down and bumps his noggin on the pavement, goes home and dies in his sleep that night, you're now going to jail for at the very least 20 years of manslaughter, give or take depending on your state. It's not worth it. I'm a former US Marine and a grunt, infantryman, at that, so I've got combat deployments under my belt and a few shiny things on my chest from years ago fighting people who actually wanted to kill other people. You know what I don't do now? Get involved in stupid fights over nothing at clubs and bars. That is frickin' street smart. Yep, and even if you're good at fighting, that almost certainly won't stop someone's friend from stepping behind you and cracking something over your head. It honestly doesn't feel like there's a win once you've seen the results of a fight. It's not worth it, as he says. Another tip, get to know your local homeless people. If you live in a city and regularly walk past the same homeless people, stop and say hi once in a while. Just have a brief chat and give them some change. Even a smile helps. Believe me, these guys know everything about what happens on your block. If you're ever in trouble, they'll help you out if you've been friendly, or they might just pretend they didn't see a thing. They'll also help you watch your car. For instance, if someone dings it and drives off, they might even get the plate for you. View the street as their home. When walking on the street, you're walking through their living room. They can be excellent hosts. This doesn't apply if you're traveling in a new city. It's not worth befriending a homeless guy if you're only there for like 2 days. Shortcuts in alleys really aren't worth the risk. Keep your money in your front pocket in crowds. Never tell anyone that you aren't street smart. There's no such thing as a wallet inspector. Ex-graffiti writer here. These skills helped me avoid all kinds of weirdos and police. Just act like you belong there. Try to dress or look average, black shirt, black peacoat, waist-length jacket, jeans, and say, Chucks. A rich guy or a poor guy would wear that and blend right in. Cover your eyebrows and eyes, hat and sunglasses, not a burqa, folks. You ever wonder why police hats cover their eyebrows? For the pure reason that it hides emotions. If you look shook, you'll get shook. If you're in an urban area and you have shopping, use an old recyclable bag to carry your stuff. Those things blend in and don't look like you'd be carrying anything of value in them. Again, it goes with blending in. Don't look lost. Make it look like you're in a hurry, but not running. Answer no. Keep your brisk pace. If anyone says anything to you, just say no and keep the pace. Use a strong tone, but not a jerk one. Alone on the subway? Find a seat with the back against the wall. Read one of those free papers, but don't read it, just scope out people. If they look shady, they might be. Let them get off the train first, and when it's your stop, wait until the last second to get off. Follow them, not the other way round. Acting crazy can work, but it can also make you a target. 5 drunk dudes would have no problem beating the crazy guy. Don't carry weapons. Most of the time you won't have the guts to use them and you might get shanked with your own knife. If you get attacked, punch the throat or try to grab the windpipe and crush it. Neither of those will kill, but nobody gets up after that. Eyes and family jewels next for crushing or attacking. Don't be on offense, but don't be on defense. Avoid eye contact like the frickin' plague. Get to an area that's lit up or an open store, cafe, something like that. If you're trying to evade someone, they'll usually F off if you go in there. If someone is following you, dip into a shop or doorway and fake check the time. Give them enough time to pass you. It shows them you've made them. The silent FU. Don't act like a victim and you won't be one. Don't assume everyone is shady. Some of the nicest people I've met have been employees of 24-hour shops in sketchy areas. If you're passing through in an area, if you know a halfway point is a bodega or something, it doesn't hurt to be friendly to the shopkeeper or even ask for fake directions. If you have to run back to that shop, he'll probably remember you as the nice guy who just made small talk. I'm a girl and I've lived in an extraordinarily sketchy neighborhood my whole life. Read Working Girls Out the Wazoo, Knife Crime, Abductions, Substance Dealing, and Crazy Homeless People. I'm now a pro, and I walk home in the early hours of the morning all the time. In general, if you're walking through a sketchy neighborhood at night, A. Do not listen to your iPod, be aware of what's going on around you. B. Put your keys in your jacket pocket before you start walking so you don't have to stop outside of your house to look for your keys. A lot of unspeakable act offenses and robberies happen on people's own doorsteps. C. Always walk with confidence and know your route. Your route should always be on the most populated and main streets possible. And some situational stuff. First, if someone tries to start a conversation, don't ignore them or indulge them. Smile and say, hi, then keep walking. If they're asking you something, say, sorry, don't have the time, don't have any change, or don't know where that is, don't want any substances, have a good night. If they're persistent, you have to run, my friend or mum or dad is waiting for me. Be kind but assertive that you don't want to talk to them. They see you're not vulnerable but also won't try to start a fight and don't feel threatened by you in any way. They don't think you're going to call the cops on them, for one. And second, if you see someone jacking a car or dealing substances and they make eye contact with you, act natural. Don't speed up or slow down, just keep walking, look straight ahead. If you're going to call the cops, wait until you've turned a corner. If they don't make eye contact with you, just keep walking like you don't see them, obviously. Soviet street brat here. Street smarts can be summarized in 3 words. Mind your business. Someone walking towards you, ask what time it is. You don't care, walk faster, mind your business. Someone asking for a hand with something, you're not freaking welfare, quicken your pace and mind your business. Drunk guys swerving towards you in the dark. Move to other side of street, mind your business. Someone wants to be friends with you, you don't give a crap. Keep moving. You don't need to talk to anyone, and no one needs to talk to you. Don't listen to suburban kids telling you to wear hats and sunglasses. Minding your business requires clear sight and open ears. Don't look like D-bag. Don't try to blend in or not blend in. Don't act crazy or normal. Don't act like anything. Just do your thing, calmly, quickly, and efficiently. Work with purpose. Move deliberately. Forget what people are telling you about fighting. You're not going to fight anything. You're a scout. Be aware of your surroundings. Look ahead. When I walk home at night, I walk in the middle of the streets, because I can see both sides better that way. If anything moves towards you, quicken your pace. When you hear steps behind you, change the side of the street just in case. Do this smoothly and without panic. Run if need be. You're a freaking scout. Do what you need to do and get out of there. To save money, order a double cheeseburger dressed like a Big Mac instead of a Big Mac meal. That's all I know. The one thing I know is no one wants to F with the kid covered in Vaseline. You're damn right, commenter. That's why the narrator is going to spend the rest of his life after narrating this undressed and greased up and ready to go. I give myself at least 24 hours before I die of exposure. Here's my wee list. First, sarcasm is not funny unless someone knows you well, and often even not then. Avoid it. 2. Listen and ask follow-up questions. People want to talk about themselves and you can get the reputation as a great conversationalist without telling a single story. 3rd, everyone is insecure and secretly loathes themselves. 4. The best-looking girl in the room has also had explosive diarrhea at some point in her life. 5. If someone's pants are hanging down, they're idiots. Don't bother talking to them. 6. Keep your shoulders back and walk purposefully everywhere you go. Keep your head up, don't look at the ground. 7. Don't try to stare someone down. However, if someone catches you looking, don't look away. Just smile and give them a minor head nod and then you can look away. They won't know what to think. 8. Carry a flashlight. It's far more effective at night than a weapon when it comes to handling trouble. Get a little super bright one that fits in your pocket. 9. Keep extra water in the car. You never know. 10. Always tip a bartender at least $5 on the first drink. $10 if you're in a decent bar. They'll remember and you won't have to wait so long for a drink. 11. When a girl says you don't need to wear protection, wear it. 12. When a guy says I don't need to wear protection, don't screw him. 13. Don't get in someone's face unless you intend to fight and never push them if they've pushed you. If it comes down to it and someone pushes you, punch them hard in the nose. Their eyes will water and you can either then continue the fight or get the F out. Hope that helped. Do not wear headphones in public. Do not walk around looking at your phone in public. Do not make eye contact with anyone in public. Do not go out in public. I'm mostly joking, everyone. The first 2 are pretty important, though. As others have mentioned, the smartest street smart thing to do is to remain aware of your surroundings. Wearing headphones and diving into your phone pretty much demolishes your chances of noticing someone who's in your neighborhood and up to no good. The first rule of going out in public is you do not talk about going out in public. You can submit your own stories to be featured here on the channel. The story submission link is in the description below, and if you want to listen to some vibey music in the background, check out easymode, also linked below, and subscribe. Dropping A and going to Chuck E. Cheese might seem like a good idea, but it's not. New Yorker here. If someone asks you for the time in a way that makes you uncomfortable at all, they're usually going for your watch or cell phone. Anything that someone offers you on the street to buy is either stolen or a cop trying to bust you for stealing stolen merchandise. All cops wear the same shoes, undercover or otherwise. Look out for those. If you're on the street late at night and feel uncomfortable, act frickin' insane. If I'm in a bad neighborhood late at night, walking to a train, I'll talk to myself, twitch, anything. It frickin' works. Don't wear your pants low and keep anything valuable in your back pockets. If they're below your butt, you won't feel a pickpocket. Need directions? Ask a cab driver or cop. I've told people that look like they're from Nowheresville the wrong direction on purpose just for fun. Most people who look tough are wimps. It's the quiet ones you need to worry about. Jerks travel in packs. It will almost never be a one-on-one fight. A lot of people carry gats in New York. Be careful. Do not buy Metro cards from anyone except the AmITheA booth or the vending machine. Everyone else selling cards is scamming you. When a kid comes up to you with his new rap CD that he's offering for free, he'll pull some bullcrap that makes you give him $10. Just keep walking. Don't stand by subway doors holding your iPod or whatever. People often stand right outside, grab it as the door is closing, and you'll be out one nice iPod. Wear shades. Dangerous dudes will read your eyes in a nanosecond. If you're a wimp and a pushover, they'll know it and take advantage. Also, shades keep you from accidentally challenging someone by looking at them in the wrong way. Just keep the idea in your head at all times. I'm minding my own bleeping business. If you walk to a part of a neighborhood with sneakers slung over the electric wires, you're in the hood. If you ever travel to a large city, don't look up at the buildings while walking around. That marks you as a tourist and an easy target for muggers. Crap, I do this in my own town. I can't help it if things are pretty when you look up. I live in Chicago. I'm always admiring our buildings. As a petite 26-year-old blonde who works in downtown LA, lives in Hollywood and takes public transport to and from work every day, sprinkle in some international weirdo experiences living in London and Shanghai, I'm so frickin' glad you asked. 1. Under every circumstance, walking down the street, appear as though you know exactly where you're going, even and especially if you don't. As already mentioned, duck into a cafe or other shop to check your map or your phone. Keep your back to the wall. And 2, I'm normally a nice person, but on my walks to and from work I consciously give off a demeanor of total witchiness. Anyone who talks to me I either completely ignore or shoot down within 1 or 2 sentences. This usually deflects anyone thinking about initiating a conversation with me, and those that do try and initiate a chat realize that I'm not having any of it very soon after. I know not everyone who talks to me is a threat, but I keep up my guard for those that are. Whatever meetings I may have lost more than make up for the amounts of times I could have been taken advantage of. I'll reiterate that I've seen so many girls risk themselves or their property because they don't want to be seen as a witch, with a B at the start instead of a W. And 3rd, ladies, purses without zippers and shoulder straps only are just asking to be stolen from. Bags only secured to your body by the shoulder are so easy to grab off you, and open-topped bags are easy to slip a hand into without you knowing. I always wear a cross-body strap with a zippered purse, and I've never been the victim of a pickpocket. For extra protection, don't let the purse dangle behind your back, but rather let it rest on your thigh in front. Backpacks aren't safe either. If you can't see your bag, you don't know what might be happening to it. Look like you know where the frick you're going. Say you're walking through an inner city area, a downtown area, or any crowded place really. Just keep your eyes focused ahead while paying real attention to your peripherals, and most people won't mess with you. Also, if you're a lady, try not to carry a purse into sketchy areas. Go guy and only carry your wallet in a jacket pocket or in your front jeans, and a phone in the same place, and keys if possible. You'll see gum on the streets. Don't pick it up. It's not free candy. Where the frick do some of you live? Amongst wild gorillas? I've lived in New York City and Queens. The simple rule for big cities is don't be super friendly, just be polite, and that's it. But you're not going to get shot or mugged if you happen to catch some guy's eye or accidentally brush up against someone in NYC. My God. Maybe if you decide to go visit the crappy parts of Brooklyn at 10 p.m., but then you're an idiot for trying that in the first place. Kind of enjoying the variation between people telling us that we're taking everything way too casually and people telling us we're taking everything too seriously. Honestly, a lot of getting caught in street crime probably comes down to bad luck. That and maybe being somewhere truly shady in the middle of the night. If a guy in a public restroom offers you a tum under the stall wall, don't eat it. Always watch your drink at clubs. When you're not drinking it, your hand should be covering the top if you're not paying much attention. Lots of just plain terrible and troll advice here, so I'll give you some serious answers. The most talked about thing in job interviews is eye contact, but it's something completely ignored in the complexities of survival. It's not enough to just use it. It might very well get your butt kicked. You have to know how to use it. 2 things that will make you a target: avoiding eye contact and making aggressive eye contact. One makes you the limping zebra, the other makes you a territorial challenge. When walking by some shady fellows, look them right in the eyes. Don't smile, it looks arrogant and high and mighty. Just look them in the eyes, give a nod of acknowledgement and a simple greeting. Hi. This does several things. It acknowledges to them that you're aware of them. Not just that, but you're not intimidated by them and you're aware of your environment. Second, it shows respect. A small sign of respect goes a long way. The key here is to be friendly without being familiar. You don't know these people, and it's insulting to act like it even with good intentions. I've shared cigarettes with homeless smackheads in Seattle back alleys and walked away with not so much as a hostile word exchanged. Just remember, you're not better than them, and they won't think twice about reminding you of that if they think you've forgotten your place in their jungle. Then body language. This one's not so easy to master as it's near impossible for most people to fake. Correct body language comes with confidence. Don't confuse this with overconfidence or false confidence. It's all about projecting an attitude, and you're aiming for the body language that projects the attitude I outlined above when talking about eye contact. Your body language says, "I'm here and I'm me. I see you, but I'm going to do me and you do you." This attitude projection should also unovertly say, "What you're doing is none of my business." Of course, if you ever get to the point where you have to make that obvious, you're already done and screwed as there's no way to say that. It must be implied on the first glance. In the end, though, body language falls on confidence, and if you don't have that, don't try to fake it. It will only make you look worse. The best you can hope for is to make it up with other tactics. Conversation. Don't. You're not these people's friends. If you found yourself in any sort of conversational exchange you didn't plan or partake in engaging that goes beyond bumming a smoke or a light, you're being roped in. Get out ASAP and make damn motherfrickin' sure no one's behind you. Pro tip, someone's behind you already. Just shut your mouth and walk away. Don't look back except to check your peripherals for someone following you. Situational awareness. Discriminate. Profile. Be frickin' prejudice. Why? Who's more likely to rob you? The old Asian man with a cane or the kid wearing a hat with a holographic sticker on it and his boxers puffed up out of his pants? You just profiled. Not based on racism, but based on an educated guess. How does the predator find the prey? They profile to find the species that's least likely to fight back and most likely to bleed results. How does the prey stay alive? Profiling every possible threat they see as a predator. Be hyper-aware of your surroundings and the people in them and profile every frickin' one of them. Don't look hyper-aware though. Practice using your peripherals. Try to read things without looking directly at them. Learn to soak in details without darting your eyes around and making eye contact with everything you possibly can. You don't want to look shut down and into your own world, but you don't want to lock eyes and stare at a substance deal going on if you so happen to stroll by one. Staying vigilant using your peripherals lets you be aware of what's going on without setting off the "hey, that guy saw us" flag. Lastly, never ever frickin' walk alone in an unfamiliar area. This should be a no-brainer, but it's such a common mistake. There's places in every populated area where the locals know not to go. If you're moving somewhere new, stick to high-traffic areas. Ask questions about the neighborhoods. Find some small, local dive bars and try to get to know some regulars and bartenders. Establishing a reputation as a good tipper helps, not only for the bartenders, but the regulars who know you're taking care of their regular bartenders. This will get you much more reliable information and eventually maybe even a reputation as someone with friends. This will go a long way, but isn't something that can be taught. You must build social skills and not burn bridges. And as a freebie, identifying aggressive body language. If someone's overtly aggressive, you'll know it from the start. The cardinal rule here is that anyone taking an unusual interest in you is aggressive. Remember the above when I mentioned if you found yourself in any conversational exchange you didn't plan, that's an unusual interest. It's normal to find yourself in a conversation with the person next to you on the bus or train about the crappy weather or the extended road construction going on. It's not normal for a group of guys wearing matching color and gold chains to step in front of you and compliment your headphones. This type of conversation ranges from extremely innocent seeming to quite aggressive, like "Yo dog, can I try on your shoes?" Just remember, if someone you don't know is interested in anything more than whether you're willing to part with a smoke, get the frick out quick. Whew! A half hour later, I can't believe that I've typed all of this up in this massive novel of a comment. A bit of backstory to hopefully put things in perspective. I grew up in a not-so-great crowd, around some quite legit gangsters from a gang the likes of which you'd see in documentaries. I learned how not to get in a fight when I wasn't drinking so much that I'd get cocky and run my mouth. When that happened, I could only hope that they'd be amused by my drunken antics and I wouldn't let a slur or something slip. That got me a busted lip a couple of times. Luckily, other than the well-deserved occasional knock to the head, I was well taken care of by the senior of this particular group who made sure I never got in so deep as I couldn't get out. So yeah, I grew up around the shady culture in my high school years. Learned a lot. Confidence is key. Not maximum confidence, that'll get you killed. You just want the right amount. Hope this helped. What made you go from innocent bystander to full-blown aggressor? I lived with random roommates one summer in college. This one guy used to regularly wake up to his alarm, hit snooze, and then manage to leave for the day without ever turning the damn thing off. He always locked his door and it would just go off endlessly. I complained about it constantly, and he'd still never managed to turn it off. It woke me up an hour earlier than needed every single day, and it was driving me insane. Finally, one day he forgot to close his door, so I took the radio, disassembled it, removed the speaker, and then put it all back together and set the correct time. I think he missed a couple of quizzes because of it, but screw it, he deserved it. He finally got a new alarm which had a much shorter snooze timer, and it never happened again. It was awesome. This is my high school bully story. I was a big kid growing up, but a real softie. You could tell by looking at me that even though I was 5'11" and 210 pounds at the age of 12, that I wouldn't do anything. I got picked on a lot as a result. The smaller bullies got major props by making me tear up. One day, the kid who sat behind me in class had been flicking me in the back all day, and I finally asked the teacher to stop him. She said, and I still frickin' remember this at 25, "Are you going to cry now?" in the most disgusted-sounding voice an adult can level at a child. I was crushed by the adult figure responding in that way, and deeply shaken. 15 minutes later, my bully, having been affirmed by the teacher pretty much, decided he'd walk by me and break my pencil. I didn't go into a fit of rage or scream or shout. I started crying softly. I stood up and slowly walked to the bully. The teacher asked me why I was standing up, but I wasn't in a state to answer her. I lifted this kid, who weighed about half as much as me, up by the neck and testes and slowly walked, still crying, to the closed classroom window, knocking the teacher out of the way with one shoulder. I slammed this kid into the window 3 or 4 times before it broke off the hinges and then proceeded to shove him out the window. The crap storm that followed included my parents suing the school and the teacher and winning. The school kept video logs of every day of class via a camera setup. They had 200 days of me being bullied on camera, 40 reports from me and my parents that I was being bullied, and 0 response to any of that. Didn't even move my seat in the classroom. The teachers and principal became responsible when they take you under their protection. They legally are both responsible for the bully and letting them do what they're doing, and the safety of the child being bullied. It took about a month of court hearings to come to a settlement. This girl used to bully me in year 7 when we caught the bus home. She used to pull my hair and pinch me and steal my water bottle and drink it. Pushed to the edge, I filled said bottle with vinegar one night, and the next day she began her daily torment. She snatched my bottle and drank it, and then threw up. Minor victory. Wow. You know, after the first sip, you know that she'd know something was definitely up. She was really committed to the act to realize that this was not pH-neutral water and was in fact acidic vinegar, and just commit to the whole damn bottle to spite you. That's a wrecked stomach to try and ensure that you finish your act of bullying. I know that she's the bad guy in this, but I kind of admire her dedication to the task. I was a mere witness to this story. A few years back, we got a very large snowfall. My neighbor decides to take his 2 small children, 5 and 2, out to build a snowman. The kids were so proud of it, they couldn't wait to show anyone walking down the street what they'd made. We woke up the next morning to see tire tracks through the neighbor's front yard going right through the newly flattened snowman. When the kids found out, they were very distressed and crying. So, being the awesome dad he was, he took them back out and rebuilt the snowman. Waking up the next morning, the same thing happened again. So this time, the guy and his kids built the snowman around this giant boulder that he had in his front yard as part of his landscaping. About 2 a.m., I heard a loud crash and looked out of my window to see a truck hobbling down the road with smoke coming out of it. Needless to say, the kids weren't as upset about their snowman the next day. We never did find out who it was. I remember in college I was walking down a sidewalk and some kid on a bicycle rode by me and spit on me. As he rode off and laughed to himself, he neglected to listen to me throw down my book bag and take off after him. At the time, I could run a 1-minute 58 half miles, so I doubt he could have escaped even if he'd seen me chasing him. I caught him within just a few seconds, pulled him off his bike, and told him if he didn't wipe it off and apologize, I was going to throw him into traffic. We were right next to a busy road. He was pretty shaken up, and I doubt he'll ever do that again. I'd always help my family, friends, neighbors, and anyone they knew with anything without asking for anything in return. We're talking childcare, computer problems, house repairs, stuff like that. I lived with an older woman out in San Francisco in an old Victorian for 4 months. Since I arrived, I fixed and replaced quite a few things around the place. Plumbing, faucets, hose, heaters, couch, toilet seat, washing machine, a few other things. About a week before I left, she wanted me to build her a bookshelf. I told her I'd do it if I received compensation. She got angry, saying that it's just a bookshelf and that I can build it no problem. She failed to notice that she doesn't have the equipment to build it, and I'd probably have to rent the tools, and I told her that if she just wants one to just buy it, and that I'd help her put it together then. She got even angrier and said, "I give you a place to stay and you won't even help me build a shelf." I couldn't hold it in any longer. I screamed, "I pay to live here. I pay for my stay, my food, and whatever else I use while here. You could have spent money hiring someone to fix everything that I did in this place. I bet the cost in repairs would be way more than what I pay per month living here." So, a week later, her still angry at me, I left without paying last month's rent. There was a kid in my math class that would sit and tout his superiority over me and tell me how much better he is than me in every facet of life. I sat there in class for a good 3 months enduring this. I never replied except to ask him to please go away, or can you leave me alone? I'm trying to listen and work. I even asked my teacher twice if I could move away, and she said no. Then one day, with him making fun of me, as usual, something inside of me finally snapped and I turned to him, with all of my pent-up rage swimming, and said, "Shut the frick up before I punch you in your goddamn smug face." He then gets up and says, "Come on, let's fight." I almost got up with him before the sweet Amish girl that I was friends with said, "Don't do it. Sit down now." I regained my composure for a minute and sat down. He sat down and said, "That's what I thought, B-word." I just calmly turned to my teacher and said, "Can I move, please?" She said no. I just turned around, gripped the kid's desk, and flipped it with him in it completely over, and turned back to the teacher and said, "How about now?" I'd never felt more satisfied and angry at the same time in my life. No one cared about the kid because they all knew what happened. A football player even came up to me and said, "I would have thrown the desk after flipping it." In short, after putting up with a kid's crap for 3 months and being polite to him, I finally snapped and flipped his desk and him on his head. At a summer camp in 2003, I saw a bunch of younger kids looking up adult flicks on the public computers. I told them to check out Tub Girl. I could hear them screaming as I walked away. So there's this wretched woman who owned a boutique next door from the restaurant where I work. One day she came into the pub and was her usual witchy, entitled self. She ordered a club sandwich with extra crispy bacon and an extra spicy Bloody Mary, since apparently her taste buds stopped working years ago. I go to the bar to get our Bloody Mary, I douse the ice in Tabasco sauce, and fill it up with vodka and our already spicy Bloody Mary mix. Then I add in a bit more Tabasco sauce just for myself, around a full ounce of Tabasco in a 10-ounce glass. To my surprise, she loved it. Grrr. It came time to send the sandwich order to the kitchen. I put her order in and added a custom modifier to the ticket. In my frustration, I wrote, "Set the bacon on fire and put the ashes on the sandwich." When her order was almost ready, the cook asked me if I was serious about it. I replied, well, she ordered a club with extra crispy bacon. He held up a spatula with 3 slivers of black, burnt meat that hardly looked like bacon at all. I chuckled, thinking he'd pulled a joke on me. At this point I was like, screw it, that's what she asked for. He finished preparing the club. I brought it out to her ready and willing to take it back and have a new one made. She ate 3/4 of the club and took the rest home, and said on the way out that it was the best time she had been at this place. I tried as hard as I could to be the full-blown aggressor, and it didn't even work. I live in an apartment complex that has community laundry. People have been opening up dryers to check if there's laundry in them. It's so loud that you can't really hear if the dryer is going. I saw this girl open up 2 dryers which are full of wet clothes and just leave them turned off. After she finally finds an empty dryer, puts her clothes in it, turns it on and leaves, I set her settings to fluff, no heat, and the time to 10 minutes. There's nothing more irritating than coming back after 50 minutes to an hour and finding out you have to wait another cycle. Oh my god. People who do this are like a much more inconsiderate version of something that already makes the narrator furious. People leaving the gosh darn door open in general when they come in from the outside. Except in this case, you're inconveniencing people for up to an hour and disrupting their plans. Not to mention all the people in the queue for the dryer after those people. Well, here's another story of dryer-related vigilantism. This happened to me. I was using the dorm laundry a few years back in college. I was working on a paper, so I wasn't paying attention while my clothes ran. A girl came in, opened the dryer my clothes were in, took my wet clothes out while they were in the process of drying, put her clothes in and tells it to keep running. She did this to 3 dryers, 2 of which were mine. I noticed this only after she did it to the last one. She looked me right in the eye, laughed, and left. I moved my clothes into the new dryers. Yeah, there were still empty ones available. Those old dryers wouldn't stop the timer while the doors were open, so I opened the doors to the 3 that she was using. I still had a load going in one of my washers, so I was going to be stuck there for over another hour. When she came down for her clothes, she noticed that her clothes were still wet. She cursed and set them again, this time paying for it herself. She'd used my money to do the last load since she took my clothes out of it. I opened the doors again. While my last load was drying, she came down to fetch her clothes again and cursed that the dryers must be broken and switched to different ones. I opened those too. By the end, she must have wasted $5 and 2 hours. It was starting to get fun and I had nowhere else to be while working on that paper. She dropped out of college later that semester because she never went to her chemistry class. You can submit your own stories to be featured here on the channel. The story submission link is in the description below. And if you want to listen to some vibey music in the background, check out easymode, also linked below, and subscribe. I work as a teller for a bank and a brand new customer was making a deposit for $50K, the first deposit ever into that account. So of course there's going to be a hold on the check. I've always been nice and I extend the offer to call on the check the next day and if it clears I'll manually release the hold. This guy was a jerk from the start. He got very defensive and demanded that there was no hold. I tried to explain I'll call on the item and I have a contact at the drawing bank, but he kept cutting me off. He then demanded I close his account. Instead of trying to talk him out of it, I didn't give a crap. One less rude customer is a win to me. So I said okay and closed his account out for him right then and there. The guy was so dumbfounded that I hadn't bent over backwards to try to convince him to keep it open. He ended up walking to my branch manager and started to complain about me. I shouted over, "Mister, you asked me to close your account, don't forget to mention that." I'm very lucky to have a branch manager that will always back up her employees. She asked the customer, "Did you ask him to close your account?" Well, he was doing his job and did what you asked him to do. And then she just let him rant on since she wasn't going to give in. Finally, after he left, we all shared a laugh. I've been working at the bank long enough to have some pull when it comes to this kind of stuff. In short, I closed out a customer's account after he asked me to do so and then he got upset for not fighting to keep his account. There was this guy who lived next to me in an apartment building and every morning at 8:30 he'd leave his apartment to go to work. I worked till late and would usually be asleep at this time. Every morning he'd ring my doorbell like 5 times and then go to work. I then proceed to get up and check the door, see there's no one there, and then I can't go back to sleep. He thought it was funny and that I didn't really care, but in all honesty, I really needed that sleep. So one day, I got up at 8:25, and when he came, before he knocked, I opened the door. I had a bullhorn waiting and shouted at the top of my lungs, "F off!" I honestly think he crapped his pants. He never did that again. Ha! As a psychopath's son, I'd like to apologize. My father, the psychopath, did the same thing to a lesbian couple that lived down the street from us. Every day, morning, noon, or night, he'd honk his car horn while passing their house. He thought it was hilarious. I always found it embarrassing and sad. It was our last night in Fiji, so we thought we'd treat ourselves and go out for a nice dinner. We went to a restaurant that would normally be way out of our price range, but screw it, it'll probably be our last family holiday. For the entire entree and main course, these 2 little frickin' wiener kids are running around screaming between tables, around the waiters, trying to get into back of house. The waiter asked their parents to keep them seated, to which the mum responded, "Don't tell me what to do." What happened next time they ran past our table? Well, my foot just happened to be in the way. The kid hit the floor and skidded like 2 meters. Everyone knew it was me, but no one said anything at the time, partly because my family was trying not to laugh. You know what? I still don't feel bad. The body shop ripped me off. They held my car hostage until I paid up. All of their locks came down with a case of superglue, and the EPA got a phone call about the leaking oil storage tank out back that I noticed when I was there. It's a parking lot now. Someone smashed the pumpkin I had on my front porch for Halloween. I was so mad that night, I took an old purse and took a dump in it. I then put it on the same step my pumpkin was on, then hid in my room and watched out the window. I don't know if it was the same kid that smashed my pumpkin that later tried to steal the purse, but the happiness I took from that moment of a kid reaching his hand into the purse while he was walking away to steal the money more than made up for the anger of a smashed pumpkin. When people around me start texting during movies, I lean over and very obviously read their texts. They then quickly put the phone away. You people are all bold in a way that I very much envy. I think the thought of a confrontation even this direct scares me to my very core. And yes, people who have their phones out in theaters are nightmares. I did the deed with the babysitter. I was in a marriage that was physically, mentally, and verbally just a hellhole. I was constantly accused of making the beast with two backs with the babysitter. For some reason, in my ex-wife's twisted mind, no matter how long I left the house for, as soon as I crossed the threshold of the front door, my manhood immediately went into the babysitter. Outside, moving cars around for 2 minutes? I'm railing the babysitter. Walk away from her in the grocery store? I'm receiving a down-under kiss from the babysitter. Leave the bedroom at night to go take a leak? Well, the only thing I was apparently leaking was my seed into said babysitter. If my ex-wife closed her eyes for 3 seconds and couldn't see me, I was having a blisteringly fast quickie with the babysitter. I consider myself a pretty honorable person. While I was battling for custody, our marriage was still considered legally binding, as the divorce wasn't finalized until custody was. I was busy trying to be an honorable person, while my ex-wife was pretty much getting busy with everyone I knew to spite me. Our custody battle lasted 3 years. I was a saint in those 3 years. Didn't enter into another relationship, didn't do the deed, quit drinking entirely, and focused completely on our daughter. As soon as I won custody and the paperwork was finished, one of my very first phone calls I made was to the babysitter. She had been 19 when she first started babysitting for us, and was 23 when everything was finalized. I was about 28. I called her, we went to the bar, and that night we had sweaty, angry, spiteful grudge whoopee. Our mutual hate for my ex-wife reared its head, and we used that energy to rail the ever-loving stupid out of each other. I was seriously concerned we were going to injure each other. That kind of bedroom fun. We didn't even try to hide it from my ex-wife because at this point we both disliked her. Not only had she constantly accused me of doing the no-pants dance with the babysitter, she had accused the babysitter of doing the same to me and physically attacked her at one point. We were grudge bumping. That was it, plain and simple. It only lasted about 2 months, 2 really great months filled with great whoopee. We knew from the beginning it was just spite procreation, and we eventually agreed to go our separate ways. Normally, I'm not a spiteful person. I don't do the deed outside of a relationship, but we'd just been accused of it so much that we were like, screw it, might as well. When I was in high school, my family had come over for Thanksgiving dinner, and my younger brother, by about 2 years, started to badmouth and talk back to everyone in a yelling manner. While always being prone to migraines, I was still the let's talk this out in a nice calm manner kind of guy. That night, however, I had a severe migraine and was getting highly annoyed by his yelling. After asking him to kindly stop and getting blown off in front of my entire family, I just swept him up and slammed him on the ground hard enough to knock the wind out of him. I figured since I'd never done anything like that before, I'd get a slap on the wrist. Everyone just looked at me as though they couldn't believe their eyes. I then left and fell asleep, and the next morning everyone pretended it didn't happen. The end. A couple of months ago, there was a teenager sitting in front of me who kept pulling his phone out to check Facebook of all things during the movie. Every time his phone lit up, I started kicking the back of his seat. It took him surprisingly many rounds of kicking to make the connection between phone on and seat kicking, but eventually he gave up. I am a pretty big guy, but I'm very light on my feet. Whenever I go into a crowd, I'm very polite and can stop on a dime when people dart in front of me. I just got back from London, and this is a city where people give 0 Fs about anything, especially on the tube. Nobody waits for anyone to get off, they just shove their way in. I'd had enough. I started laying shoulders into people as I got off. An oblivious young woman of 5'2" and 115 pounds with her eyes glued to her iPhone did not stand a chance. Slightly taller Frenchmen cursed me. I'm sure what they were saying was brutal, but I couldn't understand. Perhaps my crowning achievement came at Harrods. I was walking in a straight line and going with the flow. 2 Asian women started to go upstream. One of them tried to squeeze in between me and a tea display. I wasn't yielding. She spun full circle and started yelling at me. However, she wasn't paying attention and walked straight into the tea display, which collapsed. I felt like I was in a video for Bittersweet Symphony. 15 years ago, I was in my first year of teaching the 7th grade, fresh out of college. I had a kid who'd been held back twice, so he was 15 years old in the 7th grade. He was massive, probably about 6'1" and 220 pounds. Had a bad reputation with the entire staff, so much so that I got warnings from other teachers about him. He and I had a decent rapport, although he never did much for the first semester in terms of homework or studying. About halfway through the year, for reasons I still don't know, he approached me and told me that his mum was sick with cancer, and that he knew he wasn't doing well in school, but he was so busy trying to take care of her at home that he had little time for his studies. He said he didn't want to be held back a third time, but he also had a reputation to uphold as the school's bad mother effer. He asked me not to tell any other students or staff. I made a deal with him to tutor him privately, find him some extra credit, Basically, I told him I'd pass him as long as he promised to give me as much effort and time as he could muster, given his circumstances at home, and he really obliged for the next 5 months. So that's the good guy part of my story out of the way. Fast forward to the last 3 weeks of school. I don't know what I ate for lunch that day, but I had to take the worst number 2 of my life. Being a first-year teacher, I didn't want to leave my class unattended, but I couldn't wait. I frantically tried to find someone in my hall to cover my class for a few minutes, but all the other teachers were busy and holding it wasn't an option. I made some lousy excuse about going to blow my nose, went to the student bathroom, took the quickest number 2 I can remember, and returned to class confident that nothing untowards had occurred. Well, I was wrong. Turns out in the 2.5 minutes I was gone, the kids were goofing around and some dumb idiot made an offhand comment to my aforementioned prodigy about doing the deed with his mum or something. In a story that was corroborated by about 15 7th graders, this kid calmly stood up, walked across the room, and slapped the crap talker so hard that it drove him to the ground. And what did I do? I said, "Oh, you guys must be messing with me," and went on about the rest of the class as if nothing had happened. I regret nothing. That kid's mum died a few years later, and I still get email updates from him once in a while. Turns out he decided to be an engineer and build bridges. What's the dumbest thing you see every day, and is it funny or just plain sad? I'm a physician. Eye doctor specifically. I'll tell you that the longer I work, it's now 15 years, my standard for the average person continues to decline. Case in point? Thanks to the awful information filtering out there, I had a patient just last week who read that vitamin D helps you resist a coronavirus infection. Well, it also read that you can get more vitamin D by getting more sun. So he wanted to collect as much light as possible with his eyes. As a result, he stared at the sun for a solid 60 seconds and burned holes directly into his retinas, permanently reducing his vision with no chance at future improvement. One grown adult I met said that English is the true language of God because apparently the Bible is written in English. The amount of people who think Jesus lived in the United States is astonishing. I used to work in travel, and the amount of people who didn't understand the following points was staggering. You can't take a 3 to 7 round-trip night cruise from Miami to Australia. And no, your friend didn't just do this. No, there are in fact no ocean-bound cruises leaving from Arizona. You can't take a cruise from Miami to Hawaii and be back in 7 to 10 days. No, the airport is closed due to hurricanes, flood, or ice, and you can't demand a flight on a different carrier out of the same airport in the next hour. Also, no, you didn't just see someone else book that. Yes, it is a shorter flight for your friends from the East Coast US to the Caribbean than you in Europe, and no, nobody can change that. Yes, I'll need to see your DD-214 to confirm a military rate. No, your word that you were in a covert unit will not suffice. And no, I'm not disrespecting the military because I simply can't take your word for it. Yes, if a passport or visa or travel vaccination is needed for you to travel, you will need it. And no, a manager can't override this as it's a government requirement. I've been doing this for 6 years, and no, your friend's neighbor's hairdresser's roommate's cousin's mailman doesn't know more about this than I do. Oof. So, my favorite was a guy who was planning his honeymoon, but he didn't have a lot of money. He was bummed about the cost of air travel. A friend suggested a train ride might be cheaper. He became frustrated after a few days of trying and complained that he couldn't find any trains going to, wait for it, Hawaii. It still didn't sink in because he'd seen pictures of trains in Hawaii. He just couldn't grasp that they were shipped there. It got even more surreal after that. He argued with us that no boat was big enough to carry a train. We told him how big container ships were, and he was honestly befuddled. I mean, this is clearly a time traveler or something. He was keeping the illusion together pretty well up until that moment, but you blew his mind just a little bit too much. Honestly, I'm a modern man, I promise, and the size of industrial vehicles still blows my mind sometimes. Have you seen bucket excavators like the Bagger 288? That's some goddamn Warhammer 40k crap. I can see why people would believe in machine gods when you see something like that. A girl in one of my college classes argued that heart transplants shouldn't be allowed because that's where the feelings are, and the person receiving the heart wouldn't be the same person anymore. I do aquatic habitat restoration in a spring-fed river that people frequently tube or float on. Myself and numerous others have been asked if it comes back around so they can get out. A friend of mine showered in cold water for a year because he never thought of turning the other tap to see what it would do. I have pressed every single button, turned every tap, flicked every switch in my house at least 1 million times, including the fuses, How can people just stand in a shower and never try anything, especially if they don't have hot water? It just blows my mind. I used to work for a chatbot app. Our app would text our users every morning with a greeting in a different language, like hola, bonjour, you get the picture. One day, we got blown up by a user saying their account was getting hacked. She said, "My name is Kim Smith, not Kim Konnichiwa. Someone's hacked my account." When we explained that our service had been clearly saying hello to her in other languages every day and that Konnichiwa is hello in Japanese and her account was fine, she went on a racist rant and said Disney was behind the destruction of America. Yep. My old boss had a morning routine of walking around the office with a bucket. He was watering all of the plastic flowers. Okay, I've been unfortunately guilty of this one time. A new girl started at work and she sat across from me, so we shared some desk space in the corner. She put all of these flowers there with a special vase that made it look like real water in the bottom. As a nice gesture, I watered them for her before one weekend. She got a huge kick out of it and we laughed about it all the time. I just had a customer yell at me for putting their eggs in a separate bag, saying they don't want all of these bags and the paper ones always rip, before putting it in the bag and throwing a pound of flour on top of the eggs. It was somewhat satisfying seeing their face as we heard the cracks, until I realized I'm the one who needed to clean it up. Oh, and she complained that we hadn't warned her about the fragility of eggs. At the DMV, I went to renew my license. I was waiting in a room with the computers that people use to take the written portion. The clerk sat a man down, looked him in the eyes and said, "If you pull your phone out, it's an automatic fail." The window licker says, "Alright," while pulling out his phone and immediately failing. I saw a guy in front of me at the DMV fail the eye test and tell all the employees he has glasses but they're at home. He got really mad when the employee told him he has to come back with the glasses and retake it. Hank Johnson, the Georgia senator that wanted to prevent sending troops to an island because he was worried it would capsize. About half the calls I take on a daily basis. People call 911 to ask whether Walmart is open, or to report that they didn't get enough mayo on their burger, to complain that a cleanup at a fatality wreck is taking too long. All sorts of silly, out-of-touch crap. Granted, there's probably some level of mental illness or substance use present in those calls, but still. "I found a sandwich in one of your parks and I want to know why it didn't have mayonnaise on it." Getting a misdialed call from a random person who gets angry at you because you're not the one he or she was looking for. Happens with me several times a year. I once owned a smart car and some stranger approached me at a gas station about why I didn't have a slow vehicle sign on the back of it, since all moped cars must have that. I tried explaining that it was a real car, just a bit smaller, but he didn't take it. According to him, I was driving illegally and he was surprised the police hadn't stopped me yet on the highway. My family has 2 electric cars and the sheer number of people who ask, "Yeah, but where do you put the gas?" after explaining that it runs on batteries is just staggering. I think it's because they're still thinking hybrid car rather than all-electric car. But even after a very thorough explanation, they often still go back to, "Where does the gas go?" My dad is a pesticide investigator for the state and heard this on a complaint. "I set out all these bird feeders and bird baths, but not one bird comes to my yard. I bet it's all those pesticides that crop dusters are laying down in the field." This was said by a local school board member as they were standing in her 5-acre yard with 20 or more cats running around. At the start of working from home due to COVID, I had a few users submit tickets for connectivity issues. These tickets go through 2 lines of support before landing in my queue. Turns out that the corporate Wi-Fi doesn't follow you home, and you need home internet in order to connect to the VPN. I recently spent 20 minutes on the phone with a board member trying to diagnose why his camera wasn't working for our online meetings. Funny thing is, you have to actually have a camera in order for it to work. I used to manage a retail store that sold teen clothing, so as expected, I primarily had teens working for me. One employee came to the back room while I was on break and asked what I was eating. Somehow the topic turned to how I should have brought chicken for lunch because she wanted chicken. I told her I was vegetarian and therefore don't eat meat. She tells me chicken is not meat, it's poultry, and vegetarians can eat poultry. She then said that the grocery store aisle lists meat and poultry separately, so they're obviously different. We argued for a couple of minutes before I finally told her to go back to the sales floor. She didn't last at the job long, but damn. Customers arguing that their tattoo is backwards while their artist tries to explain that no, your tattoo is fine. It just looks backwards because that's how mirrors work. Look, as a man whose IQ halves depending on how tired he is, I could see me doing this after 4 hours in a chair with no coffee, maybe having a bit of a snooze in the middle. You forget these little facts of life temporarily sometimes. I think whether they're stupid or just having a dumb moment hangs on whether they get angry or think you're trying to trick them. You see, smart people don't often get angry when they realize they're wrong or learn something new. You know the reason you bury a rattlesnake after you kill it is because bees will eat it and then the bees can sting people with rattlesnake venom? That was from a guy I heard constantly trying to pick up women on public transport. He probably also thought that a bear ate the honey and got snake fangs and stingers on its claws. The circle of life is both gorgeous and terrifying. I worked in retail for a few years and it taught me that many people are either incapable or unwilling to read. I've had people walk up to me to ask how much something is, only for the price tag to be featured prominently on the item. It's $9.99, ma'am. How did you know? It says so on the price tag, ma'am. I worked with a lady who was remarking on how a friend of hers had lost a bunch of weight. She pondered, I wonder how many Diet Cokes she had to drink to do that. Then again, the same lady was convinced beyond repair that when you sneeze, the air only comes out of your nose. There was no convincing her otherwise. I teach 6th grade. One time a parent came to me after trying to help their child with math homework and asked, "What number is X worth? It feels like it changes with every problem." There's a considerable overlap between the intelligence of the smartest bears and the dumbest tourists, said a Yosemite Park ranger on why it's hard to design a bear-proof garbage can. I worked at a bank. Mobile depositing had just become a thing. We received pictures of someone's cash for deposit. Yeah. See, bro, just wait like 2 hours and take another photo of the same cash and deposit it again. And again, and again. Whoa, instant money. Yeah, bro, instant money. Frick, we're gonna be so rich off this $84. This woman I used to work with who insisted that any animal could reproduce with any other animal. She believed that seed from any animal was the same and that DNA was irrelevant. She believed this because she once saw some sickly, possibly deformed puppies and decided they must have been half dog and half rat. You can submit your own stories to be featured here on the channel. The story submission link is in the description below. And if you want to listen to some vibey music in the background, check out easymode, also linked below, and subscribe. A former co-worker was talking about how she wanted to go back to school to get her master's degree because she only had a bachelorette degree and wanted more job opportunities. I said, "Do you mean a bachelor's degree?" She insisted it was pronounced bachelorette when it was given to a woman. She then led me back to her office, pointed at her diploma to the word baccalaureate, and said, "See? Bachelorette." I had a co-worker, really sweet girl but dumb as all heck. She told me she smoked American spirits because they were non-addictive, see? As she showed me the box. Oh, honey, no, that says no additives. Such a sweet, stupid girl. She was a great waitress, at least. I had a bald man return a hairdryer because it burnt his head. Every time I put on my glasses so I can see better while looking for my glasses. Was at a party and someone's crappy old truck got stuck in some mud. So instead of sobering up and coming back the next day, he made a Molotov cocktail with gas and threw it at the truck. The truck caught fire and was completely destroyed. Whenever you've got a problem, you throw a Molotov cocktail, and then you've got a completely different problem. When I was in high school, we were reading a short story about what would have happened if the Japanese attacked us back with nuclear weapons after Hiroshima and Nagasaki. A girl in my class raised her hand and said something along the lines of, "Why does this matter? None of it's real anyway." The teacher asked her to clarify, but this girl thought World War II and the bombing of Japan were just from a movie and didn't actually happen. The best part is that the girl was half Japanese. Worked at a larger grocery chain whose deli used scales that would show you digitally the weight, so 1.5 pounds would show 1.5 lbs on the scale. This person I worked with, a 35-year-old female, had to ask me over and over to tell her how much she'd sliced every time she assisted someone for over 4 months. She'd passed the written and verbal test they gave to verify that you should be able to do this. She didn't seem to have problems reading any other signs or numbers, so I don't think dyslexia played a part, but man, it was so frustrating trying to do my job and hers. I worked in IT. I once had a lady call me from home because she couldn't get connected to her VPN. I asked her if she was connected to her home wireless network, and she replied saying that she didn't have home wireless. I then asked how she was connecting to the internet, and her reply was, "I'm using the cell tower, I can see it from my house." While this was technically possible with a hotspot or cellular card in your PC, this isn't what she meant. She thought she could get internet service via Wi-Fi from the cell phone tower. The woman that called into a radio station to complain about the deer crossing signs on a highway, saying that the deer will read the sign and consider this a safe place to cross the road. When farms have trouble producing their crops and you ask some idiot if that worries them, I don't get my food from a farm, I get it from Walmart. The distance that many people have from where their food comes from is shocking. One of my nieces had a cold as a toddler and was breathing through her mouth. My ex-brother-in-law flipped out because he didn't want her to get carbon monoxide poisoning from breathing through her mouth instead of her nose, like the normal way. I'm an insurance claims adjuster. If you truly knew how many stupid drivers you were sharing the road with, you'd never drive again. And let me say that because I keep getting this question when I say this, I avoid driving whenever possible. I have a car, but I take the bus to and from work. I never drive at night. Oh boy, it's like how food safety specialists have an alarmingly long list of very normal foods that they don't touch with a 10-foot barge pole. I think the rest of us are honestly just happier not knowing most of this stuff, right? When my daughter was born, we had to see the hospital pediatrician before we could switch to our usual one. We're in a tiny exam room and he's going over the do's and don'ts for new parents. To precede this, he's an older southern man. And I assume she'll be sleeping in a crib in the nursery? Oh, we have a bassinet set up beside the bed to make night feeding easier. She can't sleep with you. She won't be in the bed, she has a bassinet besides the bed. If she sleeps in the same room, there'll be too much carbon dioxide and she'll suffocate. That's what causes SIDs. Then isn't this exam room unsafe? We put in a complaint with the practice and the hospital. That's some ridiculously incorrect information to be spouting off at people, especially parents who take everything a doctor says as gospel. I can't even find the logic in what was going on there. On September 11th, the general manager called his daughter who was attending Arizona State University to wake up and make sure she saw what was going on the TV. The customer service manager said, "Oh, it won't be on her TV yet. Arizona is 2 hours behind us." Why didn't Australia warn us about September 11th? We could have got like a day's advance warning. I work at a restaurant. We were low on tomatoes for our tomato soup, so one person grabbed potatoes to see if we could use those instead. When my mum unironically claimed that the moon landing was fake because the moon was like 40 times the size of Earth. How that proves it was fake, I don't know. I hate to think that she raised me. I worked at Little Caesars and we were proofing the dough for pizza. My boss said at 7 p.m. that the dough needed to rise for 12 hours and took out her calculator to do the math. So I said, that's going to be 7 a.m. She then said the dough will expire in 48 hours and started doing the math again. I told her it would expire 2 days from now and she said, that's kind of weird how that works out, huh? I quit shortly after that. The fact the Florida government had to tell people not to shoot at the hurricane. Even better, the fact that NOAA has even had to have a section on their site explaining why using nuclear weapons against hurricanes is far worse than the worst idea you can possibly imagine. You want to be depressed? Just scroll down a webpage or Facebook feed and have a look at the ads. Things like, only 2% can solve this puzzle, crap like that. Those ads get posted so much because they actually work on a lot of people. Ugh, these are the worst. Only 5% of people are smart enough to get this right. Can you? And then it's usually some stupid grade school riddle that I've known the answer to since I was 7, or some complicated math equation that any middle schooler who remembers PEMDAS could easily solve. I actually had people on my Facebook who would share their results for these tests like, oh my god, look how smart I am, I knew the answer. I mean, sure, there are probably people who wouldn't be able to answer these, but it's definitely not 95%. And if you're dumb enough to actually believe that only 5% of the people who read that post can solve it and feel like knowing the answer somehow gives you bragging rights, you're definitely not winning any intelligence awards. In grade 10, we had a science test and the teacher gave 1 point for putting a date on the paper and 1 point for your name on the paper. And then there were 98 points for the rest of the test. A guy sitting in front of me got half a point. He didn't write the date and only wrote his first name. In the 80s, A&W attempted to compete with a McDonald's quarter-pounder burger by selling a third-pounder for the same price. The operation failed tremendously, with virtually nobody buying the burger. When they surveyed customers for an explanation, the majority of customers responded that they didn't want to pay the same price for less meat. Their customers genuinely believed that 1/3 was less than 1/4 and refused to try the new A&W burger because of it. I used to work at a burger or Shake Shack type place. Oftentimes people wouldn't read the menu at all and just open with, "I'd like a cheeseburger," and naturally would ask, "A quarter or 1/3 pound?" The variety of people who just said, whichever is bigger, astounded me. Infantryman was told to trim the hedges, so he lifted the lawnmower. His buddy started the lawnmower. As a brand new medic, I spent about 6 hours pulling finger meat out of the hedges. I knew a kid who drank bleach to prove that it wouldn't kill you. A week later, he showed up at school after taking a shot. He said he had proved his point when the teacher asked why he was bragging about it. Mr. Hawk just said, "But you can't argue that without that medical treatment you'd have died though. You even said that you had stomach damage and a burnt esophagus yourself." This kid was bragging about that. No, he wasn't mentally disabled or otherwise. He was just stupid. Myself, looking for my phone when it was in my hand the whole time, then answering a call and continuing looking for it during the call. I once got into an argument with someone over my own name. There are 2 pronunciations, German and English, and they couldn't accept the fact that I use the English pronunciation despite the fact that we're speaking English and it's what I've used my whole life. But nope, I was lying to mess with them. I've got 2 little girls who were born 15 months apart. They look pretty similar and we get asked if they're twins pretty often. Even though one's a bit taller, you'd be forgiven for thinking they were fraternal twins. But yeah, I once got into an argument with someone over whether my daughters are twins or not. It wasn't until I pointed out that I was literally there watching them be birthed that they finally conceded. The people who believe 5G was responsible for spreading COVID. Seriously, I don't understand how electromagnetic signals could possibly distribute a biologically impactful virus. Seriously, there's a new low every month and every year. The flat earther that tried to launch himself into frickin' space and died. American voters were surveyed as to which they liked better, Obamacare or the Affordable Care Act. The ACA had drastically higher support, and they are the same frickin' thing. To be fair, if I received a survey asking me to compare the two, I'd assume that the people writing the survey knew what they were doing and that they were different, even if I'd previously believed they were the same. One of my closest friends. Really good guy, but, well, I'm learning Spanish and I once told him I was reading his Don Quixote book. I complained about how difficult it was because it was written in 1605, and he said, "Wait, Spanish existed back then?" How did you play the Uno reverse card on someone who attacked your character? As a lifeguard, we had a rule that very young kids needed an adult in the water within arm's reach in the main pool. I saw this mum and her 5-year-old walk in. The mum is wearing jeans and on her phone, clearly not planning on swimming. I anticipate the issue and go to talk to her before the kid gets in. I explain our policy, that the pool is 4 feet deep minimum and that the policy is for the safety of the child, that having a parent close by who can respond in case of drowning immediately is by far faster than relying on the lifeguard to get down, jump in, and swim all the way out for a rescue. She says it's a stupid policy, that her kid is a fantastic natural swimmer and that they take him to the lake and he swims just fine. That I'm accusing her of being a bad parent, that I just don't want to do my job, all of the classic offended parent BS. Literally while she's telling me this, the kid runs and jumps into the pool, dog paddles about 10 feet out away from the edge, then goes into active drowning mode, requiring a rescue from the other lifeguard, who thankfully was basically already there to catch the kid. She signed the refusal of care and left quicker than anyone I've ever seen. Felt bad for the kid. She seemed almost mad at him for making her look like an idiot. I started working on the production line of an auto parts manufacturer. I was hot-pressing rivets into the base of an emergency brake base. According to production logs, a day's run was 300 pieces. Acceptable errors were 3. I worked there for 2 weeks before the line supervisor advised my managing consultant that I was not meeting production requirements. According to my logs, I had 0 errors and exceeded my 300 quota every day. Another line supervisor confided in me that I was being replaced with my supervisor's cousin, just arrived from the Philippines. I didn't argue or protest, it would have done me no good. The managing consultants knew as well but had no pull. After re-examining my resume and seeing I had a degree in computer science and certification in technical manual writing, I was brought back to the very same production floor in a different role. As a part of QA compliance, every workstation needed the production one-offs documented with illustrated inspection reference guides. When I arrived at the office, my former line supervisor demonstrated the quadruple take. Patrick Stewart had nothing on her. No one told her what my role was. My presence there resembled that of a site inspector. I walked the entire floor borrowing templates, taking measurements and photos. It looked very official. My former line supervisor thought that I was on her production line as a ringer to inspect her. She worked every day worried that I was preparing to give her the axe. She shared that concern in confidence with others who knew better. Nobody corrected her, they just told her not to worry. Well, either you're a much better person than most of us, or the sweet, sweet smell of her fear was enough to sustain your need for revenge. Honestly, working for someone you were convinced was going to try and fire you for years on end would probably be disastrous for your mental health. I'd be searching jobs during office hours. That's some sweet revenge for you. I was a service desk technician at a hospital helping a doctor reset his password. He kept misspelling his temporary password. It was welcome12345. Turns out he thought welcome has 2 L's and freaked out at me citing his education and my, at the time, lack thereof as evidence that he was right. After going back and forth, he got frustrated and handed me off to his nurse and left. She got it on the first try and then apologized to me for her boss's behavior. The funnest part was that as she was hanging up, I heard her talking to another nurse saying, "Yep, Dr. Dumb Idiot couldn't spell welcome again." I film and edit promotional videos. Then I post them on my company's YouTube channel. The day after I uploaded a particular run-of-the-mill video, my manager called me into his office because one of our D-bag directors, who hates our department and loves undermining me in particular, sent an email to my manager and a few higher-ups. In the email, he stated that I'd messed up the promo video because there were all of these other disgusting videos attached to it. As proof, he included a screenshot of the end of the video where all of the recommended videos appeared to star scantily clad Asian women in suggestive poses. Neither he nor my manager knew how YouTube algorithms worked, that the videos were suggested because he or someone on his account viewed that kind of content before. I have no idea how my manager explained this to him. I had a boss who thought everyone else was an idiot. One morning, the computer in the office wasn't working. She asks me if I knew anything about computers, and I tell her that I've used one before. She tells me to check the computer in the office and see if I can figure out why it's stopped working. I press the power button and she calls me a moron, telling me that she's already tried that herself. I get under the desk for a moment and then come back up. I tell her to press the power button again and it comes right on. She asks me what was wrong with it and I tell her that it was unplugged. Our school's schedule got revamped, which meant that one of our classes that was 2 periods long was cut in half to accommodate all of the changes. When I brought this up to the teacher I was co-teaching with, she called me an idiot and told everyone sitting in our table group that I wasn't very good at math, and everyone laughed at me. A few minutes later, the principal cleared up the new schedule, only for her to realize that she was wrong in the first place. Felt so good to see the look on her face when she realized she was the idiot and not me. Guy tried to tell me he knew more of my job than I did because he went to school to be an engineer and that I just sell the machines. I emailed him info directly from the manufacturer on why he was wrong. He's not my client anymore. I don't care. Screw him and anyone who uses education as a reason to be a jerk. Had a friend in college who was very full of himself. One morning while eating breakfast in the cafeteria, someone said, "I wonder how bagels are made." I said, "I'm pretty sure bagels are boiled and then baked." The pompous friend then said, "Are you stupid? Bagels aren't boiled, that's ridiculous." Someone did a quick Google search to find that bagels are in fact boiled for a minute or two before baking. People seemed genuinely intrigued by this information. When I was in 8th grade, we'd just learned about the seasons and Earth's rotation and all that. To my surprise, my teacher taught us that the Earth is actually closest to the Sun during winter in our country, but it's cold because of the tilt on the axis, not because of the proximity to the Sun. The tilt determines the seasons. And then soon after that, I went to math class and my teacher said something about how it was freezing because we're so far from the Sun. And of course I piped up to tell him he was wrong, according to what Mr. Science teacher had just taught us. My math teacher went off, ripping into me so hard in front of the class. I should mention it was lighthearted. He was known for being funny and making fun of kids all the time. Him and I were going back and forth for a while, and I specifically remember him saying, "Oh yeah, because when I'm cold, I move away from the fire. Yeah, that makes perfect sense." And I kept arguing, "No, it's because of the Earth's tilt." And so finally, he Googled it, and I was right. He at least gave me credit and admitted that he was in the wrong after that. A Dutch couple visited my workplace. It was a tourist visitor center. They insisted that the French translation on our map was wrong. The reasoning was that Groenland shouldn't be there because it was the Dutch word for Greenland, not the French one. I told them that Groenland was also the French translation, to which they chided back, "And how would you know?" I'm bilingual, I speak French, I informed them. Clearly not very well, they insisted, and then proceeded to ask for the Wi-Fi so they could use Google Translate. Well, I gave them the Wi-Fi, and to Google Translate they went. Sure enough, Grönland. They didn't even apologize. They just said, "I guess the map is correct then," and then left. Jerks. A tour group had a dad in it who insisted on trying to give his 2 cents on my animals and proceeded to put his fingers in the tank with our stunted gators, despite my warning and practically yelling at him not to. The whole time he was saying how hatchlings couldn't hurt a human only for the male to shoot out of his favorite hiding spot and latch onto the guy's hand. Yeah, I had to bite my tongue to stop laughing. This guy feels like the kind of person who gives a 3-minute diatribe every time a guide, teacher, or other official asks a group any questions. And as someone who dies inside every time one of those people opens their mouths, thank you, little alligator. I lived in Germany for a year after high school as part of an exchange program, and there were several times where I had to make phone calls. I had to call doctors, employers, program coordinators and stuff, so I got fairly used to the whole telephone garb in German. I could speak pretty fluently on the phone, but since it's not my native language, I would of course make small grammatical errors and stuff like that. This led to the unfortunate situation where people would assume I was German when on the phone because I spoke well enough, but since I kept making mistakes, they'd also think I was stupid. People were quite rude to me over the phone, assuming that was due to the assumed stupidity. After revealing I was actually a foreigner, they always sounded so surprised and complimentary of my German and were much more helpful and polite afterwards. At work one day, writing a menu board for lunch specials, a couple came in and started chuckling behind me. This lady gives me the snide look and says, "What's a sandwich? It's spelt sandwich, honey." She wrote sand, like in the desert. I just smiled and didn't even correct her. That cocky stupidity was truly a sight to behold. I'm an application developer in the public sector. I've made many of the computer programs where I work, such as the human resources, incident reporting, and some of the case management systems. Several times I've had people try to tell me, wrongly, how to use an application that I made. I especially like it when they tell me I should ask the people at the company. What company would that be? I tell them that it's very flattering that they think the software was made by an entire company instead of by me alone in my office. You can submit your own stories to be featured here on the channel. The story submission link is in the description below. And if you want to listen to some vibey music in the background, check out easymode, also linked below, and subscribe. I used to work at the Courtyard Marriott Hotel, which is a hotel oriented for business people who have to go up early and work late. You know, real workhorses and road warriors. The hotel was a sprawling 5 stories tall with about 200 or so rooms. It was also right next to LAX, so we always got a lot of business people flying in thinking they were hot crap because their company flew them out to do business in LA. Whatever. This one day I'm working the front desk and it's kind of late, around midnight, and one of our guests comes in kind of drunk and asks me to reset his room key before he heads to his room because you always do them wrong. So I'm like, yep, sure thing, not a problem, have a good night. He comes back down 5 minutes later, visibly agitated, and says, "Oh, what the heck, man? I thought I told you to remake my keys. Can't you do your fricking job right?" And in the hospitality industry, you're not allowed to talk back or raise your voice, or really stand up for yourself. Your one and only goal is to make the guest feel welcome. So I apologize, take the blame, and say it won't happen again, and make him an extra key. He snatches them from my hand and storms off to his room. 5 minutes later, he comes back down again. "What is wrong with you? Are you stupid? Are you wasting my time on purpose? I'm heading to my room and you'd better come up with working room keys." And he throws his keys at me. My manager sees all of this happen and is like, "You know what? Let me handle this. You deserve a break." I'm fuming, of course. I go to the break room and just pace, wondering what gives people the audacity to act like that. My manager eventually comes back, enters the break room with a smile and clearly something to report. He says he was going to the wrong floor. His room was actually 1 floor up. He said he's sorry. I wish I could have seen his face. When I worked as a cashier in a grocery store, people would always want to argue about their produce. They'd bring up heads of iceberg lettuce and then argue with me that they were green cabbage or vice versa. I'd always just smile, void the product, and then charge them for what they thought it was. The best was seeing people come back later angry that their coleslaw didn't work. The best, though, was the sweet potato versus yam argument that I'd have with people several times during the week leading up to Thanksgiving. Most of what we sell in the US are sweet potatoes, though some sweet potatoes grown in one state, Louisiana, are the yam variety of the sweet potato. but people often call them yams and will fight you over it, even though true yams are hard to find unless your store stocks stuff for Latin American customers. We did, but yams were rarely in stock and always more expensive than sweet potatoes. Anyway, sweet potatoes would go on sale for the holiday and people would buy lots of them. Every time I rang them up, I'd get told that they were yams and that I was dumb for not knowing that. So I'd void them and ring them up as yams are 4 times the price. When the customers would want the sale price, I'd kindly remind them that I'd tried to give them the sales price, but they'd ask me to ring them up as yams instead. I had a paper returned to me this morning because I didn't write out the full names of the authors in the manuscript. I took a screenshot of their submission guidelines detailing, author names must be formatted with the first initial followed by last name, and I sent it back. I got an apology email and a submission received notification a few minutes later. Academia. I swear to God. I was asked by my brother and girlfriend which planet is the first starting from the sun. I was then belittled for 20 minutes after asking Mercury because they were adamant it was Venus. I was just disappointed because we're in our 20s. Yeah, it's a little different when you share genes with the person and are just reminded of your bloodline's capacity for failure, I think. Still, the fact that you at least knew the right answer shows that hopefully one of you apples fell a long way from the family tree. Corporate trainer came to our offices to provide training. I popped into the room to say hello and see if she needed help. She was having trouble setting up the projector before the session. I started trying to help, but I'm not really savvy with projectors. She was getting frustrated with me as she assumed I was the IT dude, and obviously not a very good one. We eventually got it fixed and I offered her a coffee. She was a bit rude to me by that stage. I got her one anyway. Fast forward to the session itself, I introduced her to the room of 40 people and thanked her for coming. She realized then that I was the head of the division and was the one paying for her to be there. I felt quite smug at that point. She was flustered because she was trying to prepare for the meeting, but that's no excuse for crapping on the guy trying to help her. The interesting thing is, she has quite a public profile, podcast, and website among other things, and is always preaching love and tolerance as part of her training. Clearly not that particular day. Oh, working in retail has those moments constantly. People don't read the signs right, and one guy didn't get the right chips for the deal and was getting mad at me, and told me to come and he'll show me the sign. I'd already dealt with people not reading the fine print on that deal, so I told him, I'm not going to look at anything, you can go look for yourself, read it and then come back with the right product. He came back without an attitude because he knew he was wrong, and from that point on I always had my guard up when I saw him come in, and I was ready for a fight each time. My stepmom used to be an occupational therapist and would help the elderly in the hospital. One patient she had worked with was Vietnamese, so he didn't know English. He came with his son, so my stepmom decided to ask him about his father, but her coworker interrupted saying, I don't believe he speaks English. This whole time the son hadn't said a word while my stepmom was working with his father. When they were done, the father and son left, and as soon as they were at the door, the son turned around and said, Remember, I don't speak English. The coworker was dumbfounded when he said that, and all my stepmom could do was laugh. Oh sure, but I find the opposite is a better teaching environment. I was playing Street Fighter in a 7-Eleven. We'd been playing it I think for years and felt pretty confident in the game. Some 14-year-old comes in and starts telling us about the Guile handcuffs. We scoffed and laughed at him. Guile doesn't have handcuffs. And holy crap, he showed us the damn move. Granted, it was a bug, but I never forgot that. When I was in the army, me and a group of specialists were standing in a circle, taking a break in the motor pool. A lieutenant came out and said he needed a forklift driver and went around the circle pointing at each male and asked them if they had their license. None of them did. He huffed and walked away. He'd obviously skipped over the other female and I in the circle. That was fine. We were the only 88M, or heavy vehicle operators, and forklift licensed people there. The dudes were all paralegals and HR specialists. Everyone laughed. It was an embarrassing moment for him. I'm currently a junior in college, and a couple of weeks ago, when the semester started dying down, I left the dorms to come back home and finish things out online. I also started working at the local grocery store as well. Around a week ago, as I was checking out 2 customers, when they told me they wanted to pay 50-50 with 2 cards. Our system requires us to manually enter the price, so I did so, and the lovely gentleman told me my math was wrong and said he's a sophomore engineering student at a school nearby to help justify why he was correct. I respond, oh cool, I'm actually a junior at, and I inserted a much better engineering school. What are you studying? While also pulling up a calculator and showing him he was wrong. Everyone always assumes the workers here are dumb, so it's nice to show them otherwise. Some years ago, some guys were talking about cars and engines, and I don't even remember what else. One of them was really condescending to me, a female, and said, "But you probably don't know anything about that, do you?" My husband set him straight and said, "She knows a lot more about cars than I do, so don't be so sure." Then of course the guy tried to prove he knew more. He did not. I grew up around race cars and auto mechanics, who also thought everyone should understand their own car. I have to admit I know less now that they're all electric and computerized, but this was back in the day. My wife and I were traveling with a couple we worked with in South Korea. We weren't the best friends with them, but they were nice enough, so we rented a car and traveled around the Isle of Jeju. Now, this is a small island that you could drive around in about 4 or 5 hours, but we were taking our time seeing the sights. The guy was a bit of a know-it-all, but they'd been in Korea 6 months longer than us, so I always took his advice. Anyway, I'm driving the car and we're trying to find the place that we want to eat, and I say something like, "We're going the right way." And this guy responds with, "No, we're going south. Trust me, I majored in geography." I look straight ahead into the setting sun and respond with, "Weird. We found the one place on Earth where the sun sets in the south." Well, that shut him up for a while. Honestly, despite the great joke in the Avengers movie that basically implies everyone knows where the sun sets, it's the kind of thing that I'd never think to look for. Good on you for being able to get some reprieve from a know-it-all with it. I was working as a teller in the bank years ago, and a Karen was complaining about how slow and crappy my computer was. If I'd been using an IBM, she'd have been out of there already. She works at IBM, they only make the best, fastest bank equipment. Blah, blah, blah. I slowly, deliberately turned my slow, crappy IBM computer for her to look at. Not another word. I'm French and live in France, but I grew up in the UK and consider English to be like my mother tongue. When I was 17, I had to change schools, from a private one to a public one, and this was for personal reasons, but my new classmates assumed the reason was because my grades were too low and I got kicked out. That private school had high standards. Anyway, it's the first day of school and we have English class. The teacher hands out a list of sentences we have to translate and asks us to compare translations with our neighbor. The first sentence is rather hard to translate from French, and the teacher, having walked around and looked at our answers, announces that only one person in the class has got it right. We compare answers with our neighbors. The girl next to me sees my translation. "How long has it been raining for?" And she bursts out laughing. "Has it been? Has it been? I've never heard that in my life. That is so stupid." And she makes fun of me for a good while to the other girl sitting next to her. Being new and also knowing that she was going to feel stupid in a couple of minutes, I didn't say anything. Sure enough, the teacher announces that I was right, and my classmates quickly discovered that I was actually a fluent English speaker with excellent grades pretty much all around. It made making friends really hard, but I hope that girl learned her lesson to never make fun of someone without knowing the full story. Or never make fun of people ever. That would be way better. Was talking about binary star systems at a party when suddenly my ex says, "That's not what a binary is, are you dumb?" Then another friend looked up the word binary and read it out loud to him and his eyes bugged out. I told him, "Stop pretending to be an expert on things you don't understand. It makes you look like an idiot." My ex was thinking of binary computer code. He didn't consider that other things could be binary too. What's the craziest text that was actually a wrong number? Uncle Dave found the pudding. I just responded, "Cool." I'm still not sure if it was a secret code used by a crime syndicate to confirm an assassination. Phone vibrating, pull out phone. My butt cheek is tapping out Morse code on the toilet seat from a random number. When I changed phone numbers back in 19, I got the old number of some guy in his 20s in the same city who, obviously lives his best life or something. For years after that, I got calls and texts from his friends and family looking for him. "Hey, we're going out tonight. You coming? We're meeting at a nightclub." "Oh, thanks, bro, but this isn't Ethan." "Oh, who are you?" "A single mom in her late 30s. "Well, you can come too." "Thanks, that's nice of you, but I haven't been clubbing since like 2006. "We'll pick you up if you break something. Come get crunk." It was hilarious. I got a video of my buddy cranking it in the bathroom. Didn't hear from him for hours afterwards when I responded, "What the frick?" Apparently his ex-girlfriend suspected him of cheating. Apparently they regularly exchanged undressed photos. Snuck his phone while he slept and mass sent the video to everyone in his contacts, including his mother. I guess not entirely an accident, but I think it still counts. A woman texted me apologizing for how bad the hookup was the night before. This was through several very long and very detailed texts. I got all the details that I never wanted. Here's all the bullet points that I remember. He drove 4 hours to meet. They were going to spend the weekend together. He was married, and she wanted to know if he still planned on leaving his wife, as she had already broke up with her boyfriend. She was really happy to finally get his real number, even though things didn't go according to plan. They'd been using an app or something up until she got my number. She was using older pictures. She doesn't have good hygiene. He threw up a bit while giving her a down-under kiss, and she left skid marks on the bed. She went home, and the plan was to try again the next day. I think this is when he gave her my phone number. She went to the hotel early to surprise him with her fresh hoo-ha, but didn't see his car. She thought he was getting breakfast and decided to wait. After a few hours, she tried calling to see if he's okay. I don't normally answer the phone if I'm not expecting a call and I don't recognize the number. I guess he also blocked her on whatever app they were using. That's when she texted apologizing and asking for a second chance. Oh, my ever-loving deity of choice. As I've said many times with this job, this was quite enough internet for one day. And as I've realized all those other times, this is the beginning of my recording day and there is so much more left to do. Edward Keel grant me strength. A selfie of a lady who just got her hair done. I said her hair looked very nice and she had the wrong number. I'm sure that's not the worst accidental photo to send. I got a similar one where they were asking which sidewalk paver looked the best and I said, I like the first one, but I also don't know how it'd look in your house because you have the wrong number. She amusingly replied back with a picture of her front sidewalk area in front of her house, so I confirmed my choice, but also told her that the shrub in front of the windows looked like privet and that she might want to replace it. No, Gina, she swallowed them all. I told her it's not lethal to eat that many fish pellets, but she'll probably get some bad gas. What an attention-seeking loser. My dad often gets random voicemails from a little kid trying to tattle on his friend. I think he thinks he's calling the friend's mum or something, and always sounds genuinely upset. It's both hilarious and a bit sad. My sister-in-law, who's like a BFF to me, accidentally sent me hot and spicy messages that were intended for my brother-in-law. My husbands are brothers. I still can't figure out all the emojis, and we laugh about it together to this day. I get a lot of WhatsApp messages from people asking to buy illegal substances. I've never sold or done these things, but every few weeks someone will message me asking for something. I'll message back and tell them they've got the wrong number, and they'll either straight away block me or they'll tell me to stop effing around. Sometimes they'll even phone me and then find it's the wrong number and then block me. They're really far away from me too, like the other side of the country. I assume there's some dealer out there who has a similar number to mine. Hey bro, can you call me for SEX? It wasn't accidentally sent, but the text came from my mother. My name is Brian, she calls me Bri, and she wanted to talk for a sec. Two honest typos, but we still have a good laugh about it to this day. This exact text happened to my principal back when I was teaching. Principals have to inform higher admin when they're leaving the building, and he texted, I'm leaving the building for you-know-what, instead of for a sec. After sorting it out, he went to the admin building and said everyone giggled at him when he walked by. He told us this very sheepishly in a meeting, and it was hilarious. Had a woman repeatedly texting me, Stacy, I need to cancel my yoga class for tomorrow. Despite numerous replies telling her I'm not Stacy and she had the wrong number, she insisted she didn't, and that I needed to stop playing around and act professionally. So the next time she texted back, I told her, per the cancellation policy you agreed to, we don't allow cancellations within 48 hours of the class. And if you'd still like to cancel, you'll still be charged to the cost of the session plus a $25 administrative fee. Please let me know how you'd like to proceed. I didn't hear anything back for about 2 hours, and then I got another message. Sorry, guess I really did have the wrong number. Have a good day. A photo of somebody's license. The weird thing is, the last name on the license was the same as mine, but it wasn't someone I recognized. I have an uncommon last name. I've never met anyone else with it outside my family, so it was pretty strange. It's done. Act as usual from now on. The cops might be calling you. Did you answer? Thanks for the heads up. My next step was going to be acting super unnatural. I once got a text message that simply said, ham. Then about 4 days later, from the same number, I got another text, Atlantis. Nothing since then. A little disappointed that I failed that particular cipher, honestly. Got a text from some random gal talking about how she had a good time with me on a yacht, and I told her she had the wrong number, but she seemed to think I was joking. Eventually, she sent me a selfie to try and jog my memory, and I finally told her to check the number she was texting, and she instantly became apologetic and thanked me for being patient. Oh, this is a friend's story. In the parents-students WhatsApp group from his school, a mother sent a video of her having fun with herself, obviously intended for her husband. This was when the delete for everyone option wasn't available, so she begged for everyone to erase it. Obviously, most of the group didn't, so the poor kid was bullied by being forced to see a video a lot of times. They eventually moved to another city. You're a psychic vampire. Stay away from me. I really couldn't comply because it came from an unidentified number. My youngest sister had just graduated high school and was super excited to be living on her own at college. Well, she was so excited about her Christmas tree that she had put up in her apartment with her roommates and wanted to send me a pic. The message came through and it was a photo of my sister undressed from the waist up. I felt like my brain did a Control-Alt-Delete so bad that my wife actually took the phone out of my hand to see what was wrong. She immediately texted my sister, "Kelly, wrong photo." My sister was mortified. For the next week, whenever my text alert would go off, I'd involuntarily say, "Kelly's chest," like I had PTSD from the whole thing. I had to change my alert tone. I really liked that tone, too. My brother accidentally sent me a snap with text, which was meant to go to his girlfriend saying, "Don't tell me that you have a scat fetish. Matter of fact, don't even tell me that you go number 2. My heart would be broken." Ha ha ha. When I got my new cell number, the previous owner, Edward, never updated his social network. After so many conversations with his associates, I pretty much became Edward, as I started to learn about his life. I resisted ever being cruel or a jerk and just simply integrated into his social circle. I think the worst thing I did was ruin his chances on purchasing a couch off Craigslist, as the seller kept messaging me and I started to obsess over the framed horse photo in the background. She refused to throw in the horse, so I decided the couch wasn't worth it. Oh, and his church desperately needed me to step in to play piano. I sent a video of a cat smashing piano keys as a reply. No idea if he ever played or not. This went on for a year until one day it simply stopped. It was odd in a way, as I felt like I'd lost something, especially my relationship with John, who was an alcoholic. Look, I know it seems like you had good intentions by not breaking their illusions, but you really should have just alerted everyone that it was a wrong number the moment it started, for the sake of your own karma. Thank you for not doing that though, as this was hilarious. Every once in a while, I'll get a wrong text from a woman looking for someone that isn't me. I tell them they have the wrong number, they then proceed to tell me that I sound like a nice guy and ask me how I'm doing. Sometimes I'll go along with it just to amuse myself. About 5 minutes later, I'm getting undressed pics of a girl that looks like an adult film star. I feel bad for people that actually fall for these kinds of things. One time, I got a completely random text from a number that I didn't know that read, "Violets are blue, your blood is red. The window was open, I'm under your bed." I was at school at the time, but I had left the window open. I never did figure out where it came from, but I texted back, but there was never another response. Once home, there was nobody under the bed, but it was creepy as frick. Oh boy, in college I was texting this girl I was hooking up with, and was also texting a friend of mine about the same time. One of those situations you think, how could anyone ever make a mistake like that? But I accidentally sent my friend, "By the way, do you like it when I arrive inside you? Just wondering." And the screenshot of that will still be passed around long after I'm gone. You can submit your own stories to be featured here on the channel. The story submission link is in the description below. And if you want to listen to some vibey music in the background, check out easymode, also linked below, and subscribe. Had a guy send me a picture of his abs. I told him it was a wrong number. He wouldn't let up that I was the girl he'd met at the club the night before. I told him again and he wouldn't have it. So I proceeded to mess with him for the next 7 days while at work. For hours I talked dirty to this guy. He kept begging for a picture, told my coworkers and showed them the texts. Finally decided to give in and let him have it. Went to the bathroom, took off my clothes, took a selfie and sent. He was not ready for the heavily tattooed, bearded man giving him the Betty Boop pose. He did respond once more saying, "That's messed up. You could have told me it was the wrong number." I only responded once more asking when he was going to take me out. I never heard from him again. I had somebody's parole officer call me looking for them. They then called back and said I must know them because this is the number they gave. I've had that number for almost 10 years at that point. Sounds like someone never intended on showing up to that meeting with their PO. "Jackie, call me quick. Your dad, he just had an accident. Jackie, pick up the fricking phone." Some years ago, my best friend's wife, ex-wife now, not because of this, she'd been texting me about basketball. We both had daughters playing on the same team that she was coaching, and she was messaging him racy messages. I guess she got her conversations crossed and I got a grainy Motorola Razr picture of her spitting on her chest. I responded, "I appreciate the gesture, but I don't think you meant to send that to me." She apologized about 6,000 times and we swore to keep that little incident a secret. Got a text from a woman I'd just interviewed with while she was posing with a top with a chest window so large that she might as well have sent me a picture of herself undressed from the waist up because it would have saved time. But I needed that job, so I replied as a new hire should, stating that the photo made me uncomfortable and that if she could not send me such things in the future, it would be great. Turns out she was meant to be sending it to her brother. We both have the same first name, but now that raised further questions, but I dropped the subject like a stone and promised to delete the photo. It lives rent-free in my mind anyways. Not a text I received, but one that I sent. I told one of my friends that I love him and can't wait to see him. We should go out to a nice restaurant once I'm back in town. That was meant to be sent to my wife, but he and I had a good laugh about it. I got this one yesterday. Hello, Steve. Can we go to an orphanage next week? I'm obviously not Steve, but I almost responded because I wanted to know what kind of person would ask a question like that. You should have asked, depends, are we dropping off or picking up? I accidentally sent pictures of a crawl space to someone. Some random on WhatsApp sent me undressed photos. I told her she sent it to the wrong person and she argued with me about it. Like, you messed up, take the L. Random number sent me a text. So, you're sick? I answer, who is this? Murphmeister. It's not weird as much random and funny, I guess. I accidentally sent one to my boss that was for my fiancé, calling my coworkers lazy, and he texted back and agreed with me. I got multiple texts over a couple of weeks asking me about the car I was selling. Most of them were in Spanish. I wasn't selling a car. Some guy in New York City was, and he apparently got the number wrong. Finally, I just straight up asked one of the people to please go knock on his door and ask him to fix his sign. I got an apology text from the car seller later in broken English. I hope he managed to sell it. I was doing Shipped, which is like Instacart, and I texted the lady that I was shopping for to tell her the store didn't have something she ordered, and she replied, "You're right, showering together does save water, winky face." And then a few minutes later, "Sorry, yes, that substitute is fine." Not exactly a text, but close. I don't usually answer unknown phone number calls. A number called me 4 times in a row and I answered the last one. An emergency worker of some sort scolded me for not answering sooner. I explained to her that she called the wrong person. Realization set in and she apologized. I hope whoever she was trying to reach is all right. Not a text, but I recently received a postcard in the mail that was addressed to Zac Efron. My brother was dating, and is currently married to, a woman with the same name as me. He went away to college and we constantly texted and sent videos to each other. Well, one day I got a video that was all, "I miss you so much, can't wait to see you," and I was like, "Aw, sweet." Then it becomes, "I can't wait to hold you in my arms again and kiss your lips," and I was immediately like, "No, no, no," before I realized what had happened. He had changed my name to Sister after that. I got a group text once saying in all caps, "Stay away from my daughter." I'm a little intrigued by the nature of the group chat here. Was it full of family and friends of the daughter to presumably help in scaring a potential suitor away? Or was this a group of every eligible male the parent in question thought might be taking an interest in the daughter? Whew. The text said, "Happy birthday," from an unknown number. I replied, "It's not my birthday," and they replied with, "It's my phone, I'll text whatever I want." "I just don't know what to do, Mom. I just got off the phone with him and it makes me feel like I'm on fire or something. I just like him so much." Sent to me by a girl I'd just got off the phone with. Someone asked me if they could borrow $20 to buy green herb. I told them they could absolutely do that. No clue who that was. I woke up to a text that said, "Interracial beatdown." I don't know if I was supposed to be the white guy, but I was sleeping. About 8 messages in a row explaining some complex scientific theory in the middle of the night. I texted back when I woke up, "Sorry, wrong number, but thanks for the lesson." I got a text from a number that I didn't know. "How much is your famous beef jerky?" I thought this was a little weird since I do make good beef jerky, thanks Excalibur Dehydrator, but I've never ever sold it. I'm sitting there at the bar puzzling it out, but then I get another text from another number asking about it. And another. Pretty soon my phone is buzzing non-stop about people raving about or wanting to buy my beef jerky. Turns out it was a practical joke from my wife. She was part of a lady Facebook group with tons of members and asked them all to text me about beef jerky for April Fools. Funny now, but my friend and I were at the bar frantically Googling to figure out if someone had posted in Facebook Marketplace or Craigslist and used my number. I had people trying to sell substance, wishing a happy birthday to multiple people that weren't me, asking me if I could pick up their kids from practice, asking if I'm going to make the meeting, asking for notes from the meeting last week, telling me they're going to be late to work in the morning, goes in waves every 4 to 6 months. So many people. I've had my number for 15 years and I can't even count the number of wrong calls and texts I've received. Female voice message. Hey Tony, not my name. I don't know why you're avoiding my messages, but I'm going to go ahead with a termination at the clinic. I know it's what you want. Can you call me? It's in 2 days' time. XXX Sparkles. I never replied. Sorry, Sparkles. Really sad one. Someone texted me at 11 p.m. looking for an emergency lawyer to halt a deportation. They followed up with a phone call 5 minutes later, crying and pleading. I had to say that they had the wrong number and that I couldn't help. They didn't take that well. I never found out what happened. An adult movie featuring Shrek. Back when I didn't have a phone that could view images, I had to use a PC to get into my account and download what was sent. I got 3 illustrated messages of Shrek characters doing the deed. Eventually, I got a call from the number, and as soon as I answered, he knew I wasn't who he was expecting. I asked if he was the one sending the Shrek prawn, and he just said, "Sorry," before hanging up. Never got any more from him. My brother accidentally sent me a video of him getting dome by some broad in his truck. Not a text, but I got multiple voicemails looking for Booty Man. My close friends now call me Booty Man. It was my birthday about 6 years ago. I got a text from an unknown number wishing me a happy birthday. Of course, I thank them and ask who they are since I don't have their number saved. They sent me some random name that I absolutely didn't know. Turns out it was also their aunt's birthday as well. They just entered the wrong number and happened to wish me happy birthday on the correct day. Don't forget our deal. If you do, I'll kick your butt. I left it on red. My butt remains unkicked. Where are you at, bro? Will somebody please turn the gosh diddly darn server back on? It was the accidental text that reignited a friendship that had become dormant for about 5 years. That was 15 years ago and we're closer than ever now. I was asked if I wanted to go shopping, but they called me the wrong name. I politely replied that they had the wrong number, but they refused to believe me, so I eventually just blocked them on my phone. I was hoping this would end with, eventually I went shopping with them. The money's in the glove box. Where is that car? My sister and I went to the same university. I'd gone home for the weekend and our mum gave me Sloppy Joe sandwiches to bring back up to my sister at school. I drove to my sister's building and was sitting in the parking lot. I was calling her and texting her and she wasn't answering. I was getting aggravated because I had somewhere to be. I had her roommate's number and texted her and said, "Hey, are you home?" My next text to her was going to be, "Can I give you this food for my sister to throw in your fridge?" But my sister messaged me back while typing. I then typed out, "I have some sloppy joes for you, B-word." But I inadvertently sent that to my sister's roommate, who I barely knew, instead of sending it to my sister. So I'm answering for my sister's roommate. "I have some sloppy joes for you, you little B-word." Ballistic missile threat inbound to Hawaii. Seek immediate shelter. This is not a drill. To be fair, it was accidentally sent to everyone in Hawaii. "Mom, where are you?" From some girl in the Philippines. Just wrong phone prefix, probably. I questioned whether I should respond, "I'm not your mum, but I can be your daddy," but I felt that was inappropriate. Might have gotten a funny conversation, though. Someone from Florida that was very happy that the Queen died. I didn't even know Florida had a queen. What has been the best corporate Darwin Award? As in, how did they kill their own business? I own a vineyard and was looking for numbered tags to attach to the post at the end of each row. One website that sold such items said, "Don't use cheap cattle ear tags to mark your rows," and proceeded to describe how much better their tags were. I thought, cheap cattle ear tags? Of course! And promptly found and purchased them at a fraction of the cost. I would never have thought of it if not for this great marketing. I officially nominate Schlitz Beer for the Corporate Darwin Hall of Fame. #1 beer in America by far in the late 60s and early 70s, when some genius at the head office decided to change the recipe to save money on ingredients. Sales fell off a cliff. Almost immediately they changed back to the old recipe, but it was already too late. The old Schlitz drinkers stayed away in droves. The company remains up Schlitz Creek without a paddle. We actually had Schlitz as a case study in business school. Management went through no less than 10 successive rounds of cost-cutting, incrementally decreasing product quality with each round. The last cost-cutting was the death knell. They stopped filtering out the last little yeast flakes from the final product, figuring that consumers wouldn't mind little flecks of yeast in the head of their beer. Lesson learned. Consumers typically don't notice the drop in quality going from A to B, but definitely notice the drop from A to J. Prodigy Online Service. They had a great message board system which was included in the monthly rate. They got greedy and for no reason other than wanting to make more money, started charging people to use the board per message. It was beyond idiotic, and at the time, so many of us users were like, okay, we're done with Prodigy then. Within 1 year, they lost almost complete market share to CompuServe and AOL, and were all but non-existent shortly after. All because they got extra greedy. The Osborne Effect. The Osborne 1 was the first commercially successful PC. The founder pre-announced the successor to the Osborne 1 way before it was ready to come to the market. His announcement, touting how good the next machine would be, killed demand for the Osborne 1. The company then ran out of money and couldn't bring the successor to market, declared bankruptcy, and died. You know, as much as it makes sense that announcing your product will be obsolete in a few years isn't a great business idea, I do kind of prefer the honesty to the Steve Jobs method of announcing literally every product as the greatest of its kind for all eternity, only to immediately drop the pretense after the new product comes out. Whoever was in charge of getting the yellow pages online. Multi-billion-dollar industry that adopted way too late. Segway. I know this company still technically exists, but bear with me. I remember before the Segway was unveiled, it was billed by its creator, Dean Kamen, as a product that would revolutionize the way cities are being built. This quote still sticks in my head after all these years. It was also quoted as being a big deal, as big as the PC, and possibly more important than the internet. But the product and company would prove to be a major disaster. The Segway debuted in November 2002 on Amazon for $5,000. In June 2003, President Bush made headlines for falling off a Segway during a test drive. This event alone probably killed the future of the company. Then in September 2003, the company recalled all units due to injuries sustained by customers when the battery died. Fast forward to 2009, Segway was acquired by UK businessman James Heselden. In a literal Darwin Award moment, Heselden dies when he rides his Segway over a 30-foot cliff and falls into the river below. Today, as we know, the Segway lives on in a world of underachievement, the fodder of mall cops and tourism packages, not revolutionizing anything. It did, however, appear on an episode of Duck Dynasty. Oldsmobile, with the "It's not your father's Oldsmobile" ad slogan. The kids didn't want it, and the old folks thought that it changed. They never recovered from the loss. Hull & Clark. They print Avon catalogs, checks, Scantron forms, stuff like that. Their business was dying because they leveraged everything on check printing. They do something like 98% of checks in the US. If you have a checkbook, I bet $10 it's a Hull & Clark check. So anyway, they spun up a company called Fidipudi, $100 million investment. Super custom stationery printing. They organized call centers, set up 100-line VoIP systems in anticipation of the millions of orders they were going to get, dozens of graphic artists recruited, and nobody bothered to tell them that the advertising platform they'd already blown $40 million on, 1, didn't work, and 2, targeted an audience that had very little interest in old-school stationery or even one-off custom cards. Their advertising platform chosen? Facebook. Total orders taken? 13. Also, that name, Fidipudi. Phidippides was the Athenian herald who ran the 25 miles from the battlefield near Marathon to Athens to announce the Greek victory over Persia in the Battle of Marathon, only for then to immediately collapse and die. It's kind of fitting. This really was one of amazing stupidity. It was the late 1990s, the middle of the tech boom, in San Diego, one of the hearts of said tech boom. A small consulting company had about 100 programmers contracted out to about a dozen companies. The profits were huge. The company charged $200 an hour per person, paid the employee about $70 an hour, and pocketed the rest. The only overhead was a small main office, a recruiter, an HR person, and an accountant to handle all that money and small expenses. Then the company scored big. Microsoft HQ in Seattle wanted some of these people, contracting about a dozen of them to start. The profits were so massive, the programmers were flown back to San Diego each weekend. The deal was still per hour, and Microsoft loved the people and asked them to work through weekends, saving the company the cost of airfare and bringing in a couple of extra million. So, 2 months later, expense reports are getting kicked back. The company was refusing to pay large parking fees for people who worked 7 days a week for 3 to 4 weeks. The company accountant said they should have taken a cab to the airport since they were gone for 3 weeks. After reminding the accountants they hadn't intended to stay that long, that they did so at the company request, they were still refused reimbursement on parking. 5 of these contractors resigned due to the parking payment issue, and others slowly followed. The Microsoft deal collapsed because they kept losing people, and within the year the whole company folded. Yes, this company folded during the tech boom in a boom city. Hundreds of millions of dollars lost because they wanted to screw over their most income-producing employees over maybe $2,000 in parking fees. I'm very much into finance, so I've got an interesting one. In 2008, speculators were driving the price of oil to unsustainable levels. Even back when the economy was healthy, those prices made no economic sense at all. Enter SEM Group, a pipeline company that moved oil and traded energy futures on the side. In 2008, they decided to go short on oil. That's to say, they bet that oil prices would go down. For the month or two that followed, oil kept pushing higher and higher, and they kept averaging up their position. The problem here was, SEM Group's management was so certain that oil prices would fall, they shorted oil on margin, meaning they started borrowing money from their broker to short oil more. Eventually, the clearinghouses of the brokerage with whom SEM Group assumed this large short position decided that this was too much. SEM Group's losing too much money and they might go bankrupt, because SEM Group owed them money on margin, and there's a risk that they'll lose that money. So they, the clearinghouse, forced SEM Group to unwind their entire position to Barclays. SEM Group eventually went bankrupt. Literally 1 week later, oil crashed spectacularly. Over a month or so, it fell nearly 80%. SEM Group missed out on a $5 billion profit. This was written in 2014. Groupon isn't dead yet, but Google offered to buy them, then a 2-year-old local e-commerce startup, for $5.75 billion in the fall of 2010. Groupon didn't accept the offer, and now there are countless Groupon alternatives. When someone offers you $6 billion for something you just made, I say you accept it. Take the money and invent something else. Gerald Ratner called his own product total crap and inadvertently wiped out $500 billion from the company's value. He compounded this by going on to remark that some of the earrings were cheaper than a Marks & Spencer's prawn sandwich, but probably wouldn't last as long. Dumb move, but the guy had a great sense of humor. Even better is the Ratner effect. I love that it has a name. The narrator finds this name even funnier given that Brett Ratner is just kind of a byword for bad filmmaking as well. And, less humorously, several misconduct accusations from many different women. Seems more deserving of the career crash than Gerald Ratner. Netflix came really close before they wised up and shelved Quickster. In the 2010s, they announced they were dividing its services into 2 different companies. All of the instant streaming would be handled by Netflix, while the physical DVDs would be under a new service called Quickster. It was universally hated by the internet as a whole, because back then about 12 million users had joint streaming and DVD packages. The change basically forced them to reconfigure their Netflix subscription to streaming only, and then sign up for a Quickster account to get the DVDs. It basically required 2 accounts for users to get what they were previously getting from 1 account. The Quickster idea was cancelled within a month. Fun fact about that too is that the Quickster handle was already owned by some random high schooler who would exclusively tweet about smoking green herb and doing the deed with his girlfriend, so when people looked up Quickster on Twitter, that was the first thing they'd find. I trot this story out anytime there's a discussion about business stupidity. This wasn't a big corporation, just a small business, but the principle applies. When I was growing up, there was a hardware store in my town owned by a crusty old guy. The aisles were 2 feet wide and the light bulbs were only 40 watts. "It saves electricity," the owner would say if someone complained. The shelves were lined with small, worn cardboard boxes of nails, nuts, screws, bolts, and washers, practically every connector or fastener available. Every size, shape, threading, and composition. Did you need a zinc alloy washer 2 inches in diameter with a 2mm hole? Or a reverse-threaded, hex-headed brass machine bolt? Or a lock nuts for the tailpipe bracket of a 1977 Oldsmobile? This old guy had it. When I was about 20, he passed away and his wife hired a business manager. He installed new lighting, widened the aisles, eliminated the inventory that didn't sell well, which was about 90% of it. The store was stocked with the most popular fasteners and related hardware. It looked nicer, it smelled nicer, it had most of what everyone needed. And it was out of business in less than a year. Most of what the old guy sold sat on shelves for years. I remember one box from the 1940s that was still half full of bolts. 99% of it you'd never need. But if you needed any fastener, you went to his place first because you knew he had it. Once the place was the same as any other hardware store, people quit driving across town to pay slightly more for guaranteed selection. Using Android is like peeing your pants for warmth in winter, said by Nokia September 21, 2010. We love rice here in the Philippines. There's a popular and relatively cheap Japanese restaurant here that served unlimited rice for every meal, and it was very known for it. Some brilliant guy decides to take out the unlimited rice, and word gets around, and people stop going. A few months later, they decided to put the promo back, but the customers had just stopped coming by that point. To all the Filipinos wondering, you're right, it's Tokyo, Tokyo. That would be like Olive Garden deciding that breadsticks are no longer unlimited. I'd never go back. Schwinn ignoring the super small niche market of mountain bikes, leaving it to little specialty shops like Trek. Way to blow a 30-year lead, brainiacs. Borders ceasing business operations with Amazon. Buy MySpace for $580 million and then scare away users with ads intended to generate profit. Users leave MySpace and join Facebook. Sell MySpace for $38 million. Ouch. Try Bebo, brought for $850 million, and the original owners bought it back for $1 million. Circuit City making the decision to no longer sell appliances. No matter how bad the economy is, people will still buy refrigerators, washers, vacuums and stuff, but they'll wait on TVs and video games. Selling off CarMax was pretty stupid too. And speaking of Circuit City, laying off the higher paid employees and keeping all the lower paid ones, apparently never connecting the dots on a level of product knowledge equaling a level of compensation. I remember going into a Circuit City just as the nosedive began, and a young man telling me outright that all the good people were let go. He wasn't being rude or apathetic, just being honest. I hope he landed on his feet. Good guy. Fred Goodwin of Royal Bank of Scotland, or RBS. Probably has to be up there somewhere, right? Turned RBS into the largest company in the world by buying a lot of other companies. These companies didn't do well, the bank collapsed spectacularly, and the government had to buy 73% of it to stop it from folding completely. Fred the Shred lost his job and his knighthood and was forced into retirement. When he joined the company, shares were 442p, and when he left they were worth 65p. They also posted the biggest loss in UK history, 24 billion. Damn, I didn't realize you could lose a knighthood. That's one hell of a screw-up. Yes, only 7 people have ever had them taken away, and only one before 1979. And that guy was strung up on a gallows for treason. Only the monarch has the authority to take knighthoods away. The current process has a special committee of parliament that recommends people to the Queen that should have them taken away. You basically have to be convicted of a serious crime or bring the profession you were knighted for into total disrepute, as in Fred's case. Dig. That irreversible system upgrade. It's like a pretty version of Reddit, but without subreddits. Then they changed it so users couldn't really submit content anymore. And the only postings came from the RSS feeds of major news outlets. It's still around in that form, but almost nobody uses it. I hated Reddit at the time, mostly for its aesthetics, but this forced me over and I haven't regretted it. I worked on the TV show Fear Factor. Pretty sure making 2 hot blonde girls drink donkey splooge killed the show. It was cancelled after the controversy of that episode. Western Union rejected the telephone in 1876. This year, Powder, the group that ran Park City Mountain Resort, the number 3 family ski resort in the country, got absorbed by Vail, its competition, and removed from ownership of its resort. Why? Because after 20 years of having the greatest lease in history, about $150,000 a year for a resort that grosses millions and millions, the end of the lease time rolled around, and they forgot to renew it. Literally, that's it. Someone didn't take down a note, and they turned in their paperwork 3 days late, got sued, and lost everything. Do your paperwork, folks. Radio Shack's decision to move away from hobbyists and general electronics to becoming a cell phone store. Because why be the best dork store when you could be the crappiest Best Buy? Sadly, it might have gone that way anyway, with the slow ongoing death of most brick-and-mortar stores. But even though I'm not sure Radio Shack could have been saved either way, seeing a store overgeneralize and lose all of its character is probably a good sign when you're an employee that the end is nigh. The Peanut Corporation of America. They found salmonella in their products. The owner covered it up and told them to just ship it. Infected and killed scores of people, the company went bankrupt almost immediately after it was traced back to them, and the owners were charged and prosecuted. The Milwaukee Road is one of my favorites. They abandoned half of their main line because they thought it was losing money despite having heavy traffic. Several years after they'd torn up the line, they realized there had been an accounting error, and that was actually the only part of the system that was making money. They sold off some of their rolling stock to generate some short-term cash and then leased it back. When the lease price increased, they couldn't afford to repair their own equipment, so they sold off more to the leasers. Rinse and repeat. Instead of completing their electrification and buying new electric locomotives, which GE was willing to give them a deal on, they decided to remove the electrification and sell it for scrap. When they did this, scrap prices fell and it ended up being more expensive to dieselize than it would have been to finish their electrification. Needless to say, things did not go well for them. Breyer's ice cream was the brand with simple ingredients listed on the back and built a name bragging about how real they were. You might remember the commercials of little kids reading milk, sugar, vanilla back in the 90s. When they got bought out by Unilever, the ingredients now are so artificial they can't legally be known as ice cream anymore and is called frozen dairy dessert. Consumers confused why their favorite flavor doesn't melt and has the consistency of marshmallow have complained on the brand's social media accounts. Here's a sad one. Malden Mills, the original producer of the polar fleece material. CEO Aaron Fauerstein decided not to patent it, which made it an open-source textile able to be produced cheaply and widely. This wasn't the decision that killed the business, though. In 1995, Malden Mills burned down. At a time when manufacturers were relocating their operations overseas to cut costs, Fauerstein rebuilt the factory at the same location, and he continued to pay the salaries and benefits of all his employees during the rebuilding. Said Fauerstein, "I have a responsibility to the worker, both blue-collar and white-collar. I have an equal responsibility to the community. It would have been unconscionable to put 3,000 people on the streets and deliver a death blow to the cities of Lawrence and Methuen. Maybe on paper our company is worthless to Wall Street, but I can tell you it's worth far more." Sadly, the company never recovered. Fauerstein was eventually ousted, Malden Mills declared bankruptcy, and its assets were sold off or spun off to new companies. If we're going with recent, Eddie Lampert, the CEO of Sears, is one of the best contenders for the Corporate Darwin Award. He's an Ayn Rand-loving, free-market ideologist who attempted to take his non-reality-based style of life out of the lobbyist and Congress-rigged world of hedge funds and into retail. He laid off, cut, and trimmed back everything he could and forced departments, managers, and employees to fight each other for resources and pay under the delusion that the company would benefit from a survival-of-the-fittest atmosphere. Since that time, Sears lost half its value in 5 years and closed more than half of its stores, not to mention just about destroyed one of the oldest and most trusted brands in the history of the United States. Kodak telling the creator of digital photography to go F himself. This goes much deeper than anyone knows. My father was on the cutting edge of Kodak, working in research and development. There are literally so many times Kodak sold off patents on products that were ridiculously expensive to produce. My favorite example? Remember when CD players were ridiculously expensive? It was because the lens cost a ton to produce. You remember when the price dropped? Yeah, Kodak sold the patent to Sony for $50,000. There was an employee who worked at Kodak who developed this specialized process. For doing something, I can't remember exactly what. Kodak didn't want it, sold that employee the patent for $10,000. He's a millionaire now. It annoys me because it was basically the nail in the coffin for Rochester, New York, and as a side effect, the whole region. Our biggest employer now? A hospital and a grocery store. Thanks a ton, Kodak, Xerox, and Bausch & Lomb. Blockbuster not buying Netflix for $50 million. Netflix is now worth $406 billion in 2025. Blockbuster has a one-season show on Netflix starring Randall Park? There's a restaurant in Austin that has really great chicken wings. At one point a few years back, the wings were taken off the menu because they were too popular and slowing down the kitchen. That lasted about a month before someone realized it was a better idea to put some time and effort into improving the kitchen rather than kill off their best-selling item. Enron for paying their executives IDEA bonuses before the ideas turned a profit. They paid one guy millions for inventing an online movie downloading service about 10 years before it was feasible. Ironically, the documentary is available on Netflix. It didn't kill the company, but Fox inadvertently handed George Lucas a multi-billion-dollar merchandising empire to save a measly $20,000 on his Star Wars salary. The Sci-Fi Channel changing the spelling of their name to SYFY, removing the word channel and replacing their good shows like Battlestar with crappy reality TV. They're lucky they still exist at all. Motorola thinking smartphones wouldn't catch on. I hope in the future it's Comcast for not investing in decent internet or customer service. I audited an air cargo company, and essentially a member of the legal department had shifted the terms and conditions on their lease contracts. Basically, they rearranged the terms, and in the process of copy-pasting the information, they unintentionally cut the part out which pushed all of the normal flying expenses back onto the client. Fuel, landing fees, all of the stuff a normal air cargo contract would come with. The contract was for their biggest client, and for a while the client signed the papers and paid as they normally had, until the client got all new management. The new management at the client reviewed all contract terms and found they no longer had to pay these expenses they previously had to. So they didn't, for 2 years. When the company I audited found receivables aged greater than 2 years, they began to flip out and demand payment. The customer basically said, "We have no obligation to pay, so we're not." The company I audited went back to the agreement where they pretty much said, "Oh, the receivable was not collectible," so they wrote it off, forcing them to take an enormous hit on their income statement, which in turn caused them to break a debt covenant, and all their long-term debt became current. Boom. Dead in the water, all due to a copy and paste error. In short, company went bankrupt because lawyers can't copy-paste. Kmart took out a whole bunch of debt to buy back their shares, looking to raise their share price. When news of this came out, Walmart, which had basically no debt at the time, decided it would be a good time to start a price war. Kmart had to pay off interest, whereas Walmart had little to no interest payments to make. So, by lowering the profit margin to a point where Kmart had to cut back on their internal investment, Walmart surged ahead while Kmart lagged behind. The biggest cut Kmart made, I believe, was CAPEX, or capital expenditures, things like making new stores and upkeeping current ones. And that's a major reason why Walmart is so popular and booming, whereas Kmart has always seemed just a little bit off. General Motors decided to make as many cars as possible using the same model and only changing the brand. Too many models and not enough quality were all being sold to the same tier of consumer. They hoped for regional loyalty at best and killed their own company. It didn't kill the business, but Xerox basically gave away the concepts behind the modern PC to Apple. When you subscribe, make sure to hit the bell to turn on notifications. Put the playlist on in the background to finish listening to all the stories, or if you want some vibey music to put on in the background, check out easymode. If you like Am I the Genius, give Am I the Jerk a shot. Everything linked in the description.